Star Wars, Silver Oath. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176 Recycling. Until his death, Zazi kept talking, as if the fatal injuries on his body were fake. But the injuries confirmed by the Jedi apprentices finally took his life. Scene looked at the emaciated body on the ground, feeling confused for a moment. When Zazi was alive, and when he had questions and answers with him, Scene still had enough confidence to believe that his choice was not wrong. But when Zazi really died in front of him, Scene felt a trace of confusion that he couldn't get rid of. Did you do something wrong? Is it wrong to desperately kill this perverted murderer who has caused endless troubles? Was he finally driven to reason by hatred? If he really followed his deal and killed the well-deserved Nanujin in exchange for information on Zazi, would it be a better choice for the Khan Galaxy and the Jedi Masters and Disciples? The questions that had been driven out of the mind by the Jedi's beliefs came again, washing away the Jedi apprentice's beliefs like a tide. However, this time, before he could clear his thoughts, the shrill siren enveloped him. Scene was in awe and suddenly realized that he had been delayed here for too long. So, Blackwing was coming. Even if you really made the wrong choice, regret and self-examination can be put off for later. What you need to consider now is how to get out. However, when Scene seriously wanted to escape, he realized that he had been too focused on Zazi and had not considered what would happen after killing Zazi. The escape route in his mind was still blurry. Scene took a long breath again and gathered his thoughts. He temporarily put Zazi's figure behind him and silently prayed for the guidance of the Force. However, the feedback given to him by the omnipresent Force became vague. There seemed to be many forked roads in front of him, each leading to a completely different endpoint. At this time, the endpoint was hazy and difficult to distinguish, making it difficult to make a decision. The situation was tense and there was no room for looking forward or backward. Scene gritted his teeth and made a rational judgment. He chose the one closest to the ground, passage from several roads, and walked on. At the same time, in the monitoring room, Jiuo Xiaoming has firmly locked Zion's location. Looking at the wind-like apprentice on the screen, Jiuo Xiaoming squinted his eyes slightly, as if he was an experienced hunter who was bound to win. The Blackwing warriors surrounding Jiuo Xiaoming all cast admiring glances at him. Before, outside the VIP lounge, Jiuo Xiaoming allowed Zazi and Scene to escape, but did not rush to pursue them. The team members were still a little confused at the time, but now it seems that the conclusion is clear at a glance. Jiuo Xiaoming had long expected that there would be internal strife after the two people left the lounge. Although Jiuo Xiaoming has proven that he is invincible in countless missions in the past, the team members were still amazed when they saw it with their own eyes. The petite female warrior couldn't help but ask, "Captain, how did you guess it?" Jiuo Xiaoming said that Jedi boy can cut through the floor with a lightsaber, and of course he can also cut through the door panel, although it is also possible it was too late, but he didn't even try to leave a cut mark on the door. This could only mean that he had no murderous intention towards Nanujin. So, since he didn't want to kill Nanujin, he had no choice but to kill her. Zazi. So, that's it. The female warrior opened her mouth half open, forcing herself to digest this unreasonable logic, and then felt that there was indeed an insurmountable gap in IQ between herself and the captain. Fortunately, I'm just a team member, so I only need to strictly follow the captain's instructions during the mission. There is nothing more reassuring than fighting behind Jiuo Xiaoming. The good Captain Jiuo Xiaoming, who reassured the team members, also gave the order, after thinking for a moment. No 3, you, number 5, and number 7 will lead a team to capture that GD kid. Try to capture him alive, but there is no need to force him. Hearing this, number 3 was shocked. He didn't expect that the captain would actually name himself and assign such a difficult task. Yes, but Jiuo Xiaoming interrupted. Don't worry, you can use the security forces in Shiangsu and Jade Hall at will. He is already at the end of his strength, so there is no need to be so afraid, and if necessary, he can do it at all costs. 3. There are still some doubts in Heyo's heart. Faced with the GD apprentice who is not willing to join forces with a perverted murderer, can at all costs really be useful? And at the end of the battle, the movement seen on the monitor did not show at all that he was at the end of his tether. But the captain's judgment has never been wrong. No matter how many doubts number 3 has in his mind at this time, he can only put them aside first. He quickly greeted all his teammates and used the communicator to mobilize 2 teams of security mercenaries. Then he left the control room and walked along an elevator shaft that led directly to the lower floor of the Jade building to intercept Scene. After Guo Xiaoming assigned the mission to number 3, he no longer paid attention to the GD apprentice. After returning the screen in the monitoring room to normal monitoring status, he closed his eyes and fell into deep thought. After a long time, Guo Xiaoming opened his eyes, stood up, and prepared to leave. The team members around him all had their own confusions, and I didn't know what the captain was thinking about. But no one dared to disturb him, because the silence of the captain of Black Wing means that there is no doubt and no room for discussion. But Guo Xiaoming's steps were interrupted by a sudden voice. "Captain Guo, where are you going?" Guo Xiaoming couldn't help but stop when he heard the sound. His eyes followed the direction of the sound and came to the last row of seats in the control room. There, sitting as a member of the board of directors of Kyankan Group, one of the only remaining elders of the Nan family, Mr. Nan Yujin. "Please don't worry," Guo Xiaoming responded in a deep voice. "I will always stay with you on the 18th. Nan Yujin turned his head and glanced at the young man who was following him silently like a shadow. The soldier smiled. "I'm not worried about myself. I'm just curious about what the captain is planning to do now. Are there any safety risks in the Xiangsu and Jade building that the captain needs to deal with personally?" Guo Xiaoming hesitated and said, "There are no safety risks, just some necessary finishing work." Nan Yujin's eyes wandered to a surveillance screen and asked, "Does the finishing work refer to the GD apprentice or the Xia family? Traitor?" Guo Xiaoming knew that he couldn't hide it, so he said frankly, "Zuan blood has some materials on his body that must be recovered. Haha, is the big family now so unreasonable? Kill me, and then you can collect the body for the killer in a generous manner. Why are you planning to do it again?" Chapter 177 Duty. Nan Yujin's tone seemed slow, but the weight of his words was so heavy that the Black Wing warriors in the monitoring room were a little breathless. Guo Xiaoming, however, seemed to feel no weight at all and responded slowly, "Nan Yujin has misunderstood. Recycling the Zuan blood is the mission given to Black Wing by the board of directors. No matter which faction the dead belong to or who ordered them, we will recycle the materials after his death." After a pause, Guo Xiaoming explained, "Black Wing will treat every board member fairly and try our best to protect their personal safety. We will never have any bias." Nan Yujin smiled and said, "Of course, otherwise when I asked you to protect us, you could have used all kinds of reasons to shirk it. I didn't doubt your intention. It's just that although Black Wing has no bias, does the board of directors have no bias?" Guo Xiaoming did not respond because this question was beyond the responsibility of Black Wing. "Forget it. I won't bother you with these boring questions. I just have a small question that I'm curious about. Is that young man just now a GD apprentice?" This question belongs to the category that Black Wing can answer, so Guo Xiaoming explained seriously, "Yes, his name is Scene, and he is a GD apprentice. Rumor has it that GD Knights are the defenders of justice and order, so why did he collude with a shady killer to harm me?" This question made Guo Xiaoming speechless for a while. The GD Knight who represents justice is willing to team up with a perverted killer to kill you. What do you think is the reason? However, from the perspective of the captain of Black Wing, this naive middle-aged man in front of him can't really be called a heinous crime. As a member of the board of directors of Kyankan Group and an elder of the Nan family, many of Nan Yujin's actions can be said to be just the duty of a superior. Capital is growing, power is colluding, and superiors have the power to decide life and death over civilians. Similar or even worse things have long been common in the Kyankan Group. Compared with those truly unscrupulous dignitaries, Nan Yujin seems more amiable. But these words are really hard to say. Fortunately, Nanyujin did not make it too difficult for the captain of Blackwing, and asked the next question with a smile. No matter what the Jedi's position is, their strength should be certain. How do you plan to capture him? There won't be any danger, right? Of course, it's not that I don't trust you, I'm just a little curious. As a mortal, how can we fight against the Jedi? Guo Xiaoming said, in my opinion, Jedi are just ordinary creatures who have mastered some force skills. They will get tired, hungry, injured, and of course die. There is no need to overestimate them, and there is no need to be afraid of them. Well, you are worthy of being the invincible captain of Blackwing. I believe you really don't have to fear anyone, but you just sent a few very young warriors. Will there be any problem? At this time, listening to Nanyujin's endless questions, the members of Blackwing had already become a little annoyed, but Guo Xiaoming responded patiently. Although number 3 and the others have not joined Blackwing for a long time, they have all undergone rigorous assessments, and can be fully trusted in terms of strength. Really? But I heard that, since the group of elite soldiers left Kyankan security due to an accident 10 years ago, the top fighters under the group have been lacking in succession. Those young guys don't seem to be as reliable as you, the captain. Boss Nanyujin, the rumors of a lack of succession are pure nonsense. In terms of strength, even the young fighters who have just joined Blackwing are definitely not inferior to those deserters who only live in legends. When Nanyujin heard the word deserter, his smile showed a bit of amusement. Is that so? It turns out that I was prejudiced and underestimated everyone in Blackwing. In this case, I will wait for good news from Blackwing. Guo Xiaoming bowed to Nanyujin, said nothing more, and left quickly. After Guo Xiaoming led the team away, Nanyujin suddenly spoke up and asked number 18 behind him, do those young fighters sent to capture the Jedi apprentices really have special skills? Number 18 remained silent. Nanyujin asked again. Number 5 and number 7 are fine, but number 3 seems to be impatient and may easily become a breakthrough point. Number 18 remained silent. Also, although number 5 seems calm, I noticed that he will only follow orders when people around him give him orders. Such a person may lack the ability to respond. Number 7 is steady and flexible, but seems a bit slick and may not be able to withstand pressure. These 3 people have their own flaws. Compared with the elites who grew up in Kyankan security, they are really. Nanyujin's endless chatter was suddenly interrupted. Number 18, standing in the shadows, could not help but retort. Boss Nanyujin, every man has his own strengths and weaknesses. If you look at a person's strength in a one-sided way, you will only come to a biased and absurd conclusion. Number 3's impulsive personality is just a facade to hide his true nature. In actual combat, he can often use accurate shooting to unexpectedly and fatally strike the enemy. Number 5's execution ability is unparalleled in the world. He will not hesitate, even if there are mountains of swords and seas of fire in front of him. Number 7 is the think tank that ensures that the team will never passively resist pressure. He can always find the most favorable time to shoot and strive for the most lucrative benefits for the team. The cooperation of these 3 people will never be inferior to anyone 10 years ago in actual combat ability. After this impassioned speech, Nanyujin only smiled and asked, did Captain Guo teach you these words? Number 18's enthusiasm stopped abruptly, and for a moment, he felt an indescribable shame and anger in his heart. Although the other party's tone was gentle, his contempt for Blackwing was beyond words. This Nanyujin, he is really hateful. However, at the moment when anger surged in his heart, 18th was also suddenly shocked. What's wrong with me? How could I get angry over such a small matter? As a soldier of Blackwing, 18th has participated in many operations to protect the rich and powerful, and he has seen too many of the poor and incompetent people during this period, those who take human lives lightly, those who are greedy for money and lustful, and those who are incompetent and incompetent. In contrast, Nanyujin's resume is almost clean, and he rarely embarrasses others during the mission. He is simply an ideal customer. But for some reason, when he is next to this person, he always can't suppress the anger in his heart, as if the other party has some blood feud with him. This kind of emotional instability is a big taboo for Blackwing. For a while, 18th even considered taking some tranquilizers. Otherwise, he really can't guarantee that he can control himself. Fortunately, Nanyujin did not continue to tease his emotions. After asking the question, he nodded. Forget it, maybe I really underestimated the level of Blackwing. After all, I'm just an ordinary person who has hardly held a blaster. After that, I will wait for good news from you professionals. Please rest assured, President Nanyujin. Number 18 suppressed his anger and took the opportunity to respond. By the way, the eldest lady. Number 18 frowned and said, I'm sorry, President Nan Wuiyao still insists on using her own people. We only have number 10 and number 11 watching from afar. But we will definitely do our best to protect her. That's good. I've rested enough here. Let's go to the banquet hall. Chapter 178 Staff. After hearing this, number 18 nodded and led the way. However, as he walked, he always felt a little uneasy, as if he had done something wrong. However, after reflecting on it, he didn't think he had done anything wrong. Although he was inexplicably irritated just now and wanted to beat Nanyujin up, he didn't put it into practice after all, and didn't even show it. There was no omission in etiquette. On the contrary, he answered all questions from Nanyujin with an extremely correct attitude. Although the questions he answered were a little sensitive, they were not particularly confidential. They were just the specialties of the three teammates. Of course, regarding the information of Blackwing, any details are confidential in theory, and Captain Jiuo Xiaoming didn't answer in detail before. But Jiuo Xiaoming can shirk it, but number 18 can't. After all, Nanyujin is a member of the board of directors and has a high level of intelligence authority. When he asked questions, if number 18 insisted on keeping silent, it would become a courtesy problem. Moreover, unless Nanyujin learned the secret and took the initiative to run to scene to remind him. Otherwise, even if he knew some secrets of the Blackwing team members, what would happen? Could it be that he was really out of his mind to help a Jedi apprentice who wanted to kill him? After thinking it over in his mind, number 18 was sure that he had done nothing wrong, so he suppressed his uneasiness and turned his attention away from Nanyujin. As the banquet hall got closer and closer, he couldn't help but think of the mercenaries hired by Nan Wuiyao. The daughter of the Nan family would rather trust those unknown mercenaries than the Blackwing, directly under the board of directors. Although Nan Wuiyao's distrust of the board of directors was understandable under the premise of Nan Hela's bizarre death, as a member of Blackwing, it was inevitable that he would be hostile to those competitors with strange appearances. As far as number 18 knew, even the captain, who had always been shrewd, had clearly expressed his hostility towards those mercenaries. This made number 18 curious about their identities. You know, even the remnants of the rebels entrenched in Zen didn't get the slightest attention from Jiuo Xiaoming, so what virtue did a few mercenaries have? Another point that made him curious was that his teammates clearly knew each other's identities, but they were all very secretive and would never discuss related topics in front of him. This made number 18, who had worked so hard to become a regular employee, particularly uncomfortable. Was it because he, a man from the countryside, still failed to gain the recognition of the team, or was it because this secret was so important that there was a reason to hide it from him? Are there any special features of those mercenaries who were said to be from Zun? It can't be the famous Silver. The momentary distraction made this well-trained mercenary completely unaware of Nanyujin's movements behind him. The bloated and unhurried elder of the Nan family was holding a tablet in his hand and sending a message to an unknown target with extremely skilled movements. A vital message. At the same time, in the lower area of Xiangsu and Jade Building, Scene was already feeling difficult to walk. This landmark building in the Xiangsuan district seemed to be alive inside, with various traps emerging one after another, constantly blocking his escape path. Or the suddenly closed fire door, or the torrential rain of firefighting, or the group of office clerks who were sent to catch the assassin in a hurry. Objectively speaking, the last one is the most difficult. Scene can neither use the lightsaber to cut people, nor find space to avoid under the human wave tactics. He is often forced to retreat and take a detour by a group of people holding desk lamps, wrenches, and digital pens. Scene is helpless about this. After Xiaozi's death, he is the only rebel left in the entire Xiangsu Udang. It is inevitable that he will be passive everywhere when he fights against the security force of the entire building with his own strength. At this time, if Xiaozi is still alive, there must be enough ways to help him get out of trouble, such as blowing up all the people who are blocking the road in front of him, regardless of gender, age or young. So Xin would rather he die. Of course, if you think about it from another angle, if Xiaozi was still alive, the managers of Xiangsu and Yudan would not send these unarmed civilians to die. The other party was sure that he would not kill indiscriminately, so they resorted to such despicable means. The means were despicable, but effective. As more and more ordinary employees were mobilized, Xin felt as if he was trapped in layers of spider webs, and his space for movement became increasingly narrow. At first, he almost broke through to the bottom exit of Xiangsu and Yudang, but after several twists and turns, he was forced to the office area on the middle floor. At this moment, he suddenly heard someone shouting in the distance. "Minister Cairo, I just saw him. He should be in the direction of the utility room." Xin was shocked and realized that he was actually discovered by a group of civilian staff in Xiangsu and Yudang. Although he was trapped in an unfamiliar environment and there were probes all around, it was only a matter of time before he was exposed, but the meaning of being exposed to ordinary people was different. Unfortunately, Xin didn't have time to think about it, and he heard a noisy sound of footsteps and discussions in the distance. "Minister Cairo, do you think the bounty offered by the higher-ups is true? If you catch the assassin, you'll get 2 million Kyankan coins?" Xin couldn't help but be surprised. The people of Xiangsu and Yudong actually offered such a high bounty? 2 million Kyankan coins? What surprised him even more was that he heard a familiar voice. Humph, the wanted order signed by President Chen and the instructions issued by President Zhang Jincheng are of course true. Xin's mind quickly flashed with the image of a middle-aged man with a big belly, who looked greasy, but was actually smart and optimistic. Not long ago, when Xin went to the Ministry of Health to recover Xiaozi's bomb, he had met him once. Cairo Yankang, the deputy director of the Xiangsu District Health Department. Xin had never expected to meet him again in this way, but it should be a blessing in disguise. According to Xin's analysis of Cairo Yankang, the smart middle-aged man would probably not work too hard in such a high-risk job. Sure enough, Cairo Yankang then added in a mocking tone, "Not only are there 2 million Kyankan coins, but also a set of real estate in the core area." Is this true? The surroundings were immediately in an uproar, and a group of clerks seemed to be very excited. 2 million Kyankan coins are indeed a huge sum of money, but for these senior white-collar workers working in the core area of Xiangsu District, it is just the price of a livable house. The value of a luxury house where the real upper-class lives is astronomical. If the bounty is really set to this point, then I really have to capture the assassin no matter what. However, Cairo Yankang immediately said, "That's right. There is definitely a place for you in the cemetery of Xiangsu and District 1. How about the luxurious inn house in the core area? Why don't you go and grab it?" After saying this, the enthusiastic atmosphere around them suddenly cooled down by half, and those clerks who were blinded by the bounty finally began to seriously consider their own lives. Chapter 179 Unknown Information. When people were thinking about different things, Cairo Yankang said, "You have worked in Xiangsu and Yudong for so long. Don't you understand such a simple truth? If there is really a good job of picking up 2 million for free, how could it be our turn? Even if those big shots don't care about 2 million, do their trusted favorites also care about it? And ask yourself, what kind of favorites are we?" Someone immediately joked, "We are Minister Cairo's favorites. That's why you are sent to do this kind of hard work with me. I tell you, if there is really a job in the world that can earn 2 million, it must cost 1,900,000, and we are the price paid by the higher-ups." This exquisite and pessimistic speech made even Xin, who was hiding in the distance, nod and breathe a sigh of relief. If this group of people can seriously understand the spirit of Cairo Yankang's instructions and passively slow down for a while, Xin will have the opportunity to rush out of the utility room and cross the office rest area to the safety passage before they can react in time. However, as soon as Cairo Yankang finished speaking, an unscrupulous voice came from the crowd. "Minister Cairo, you are a successful person who has already established a family and a house, so of course you don't need 2 million. We young bachelors are still counting on this money to get married. Kyo Yang Kang laughed angrily. Then you might as well expect to have everything in your dreams. Ah, I saw it. It's over there. Follow me. The unscrupulous voice ignored Kyo Yang Kang and shouted to the people around him to run towards Scene. Scene suddenly had a headache. He didn't know how he was exposed so thoroughly. Those clerks from the Ministry of Health actually ran straight towards him. Although they were almost unarmed, they were outnumbered and far beyond the scope of the mind control technique. And Scene was now in the utility room, surrounded by closed areas, and there was no way to avoid it. In the emergency, many thoughts turned through Scene's mind, and then his right hand couldn't help but touch the blaster at his waist. Because after a simple trade-off, Scene found that using a dark muzzle of a gun was more effective than those complicated and fragile gentle plans. Of course, facing a group of civilians, the Jedi apprentice did not intend to really cause casualties, but at least he had to create enough panic to make those idle people retreat. After determining the action plan, Scene did not hesitate to flash out of the utility room and pointed the blaster accurately at the large screen in the rest area outside. With just one shot, he could turn the TV into a burst of fireworks, intimidating everyone nearby. And he could take this opportunity to cross the rest area and head to the safe passage. However, at the moment Scene flashed out of the utility room, the warning from the Force made him subconsciously stop his action. Almost at the same time, a red energy beam passed in front of his eyes, less than a hand's distance from his outstretched arm. Just a little bit. If there was no warning from the Force, he would be pierced through the palm of his hand by the energy beam. Scene turned his head in astonishment and saw a sturdy man with a gun standing among the staff of the Ministry of Health. The man was tall and burly, and the standard blaster in his hand looked like a child's toy. Although his shooting posture was strange, his shooting skills were extremely accurate, and he was just one step away from taking Scene's right hand. And he was looking over with the same surprised eyes, as if he didn't expect Scene to be able to dodge his shot that he was determined to hit. Scene only looked at him and the people who suddenly cried out beside him, and he felt a little scalp numb. What a sinister and tricky trap. The tall gunman mixed in with the civilians of Shiangsa Nudang, which could not only hide his presence, but also launch a sneak attack unexpectedly. More importantly, he could unscrupulously use the civilians around him as human shields, so that Scene had no way to fight back. When Scene was feeling the pinch, the gunman turned around and cursed openly. Number 7, you idiot. You were so confident that this plan would work, but it didn't work at all. A deep voice in the crowd responded, if it really didn't work at all, we wouldn't be able to stop him here. It was just a missed shot, and it's not the first time that you missed, right? Number 3, eat banter shit, you nasty chicken. Number 3 cursed, without you, a idiot, I would never miss the target. After cursing his teammates, number 3 turned around and said to Scene, give up resistance, it's good for both of us. I won't miss the next shot again. Scene hid behind the door of the utility room and ignored the other party's persuasion to surrender. His brain was spinning rapidly, considering the next course of action. The other party was standing in the middle of the crowd, and in this limited space, the group of civilian staff from the Ministry of Health could not be dispersed too far, which made it difficult for the Jedi apprentices who were concerned about the casualties of civilians to fight the other party fairly. However, considering the opponent's meticulousness and viciousness, it might not be realistic to avoid the battle. The opponent will definitely use civilians as bargaining chips to force him to surrender. So, what should I do now? Just as Scene's mind was racing, he suddenly felt his wrist tremble. The multifunctional wristband he made by himself was telling him that he had received an urgent message. Scene did not hesitate and chose to receive and open it directly. There were only a handful of people who could send messages to his wristband, and no matter who it was unlikely that they would coincidentally send harassing messages at this time. So even if the situation was urgent, Scene chose to read the message first. This choice almost saved his life, because the holographic text projected from the wristband clearly showed the information of 3 people. Number 3, medium build, sharpshooter, good at sneak attacks. Number 5, tall and strong execution, good at attacking. Number 7, whose true identity is unknown, good at conspiracy and calculation. Objectively speaking, this information is so brief and simple, and the unknown identity of the sender makes the information extremely suspicious. However, in Seen's eyes, this information is of extraordinary significance. Rather than thinking about who sent the message and why he had his own contact information, the more important thing was the value of the message itself, because it just happened to correspond to the real situation. Number 3, sharpshooter, medium build, good at sneak attacks. Number 5 is tall and strong, with strong execution ability. Looking at these 2 lines of words, and thinking of the tall figure of the gunman hiding in the crowd, Seen suddenly flashed a rational warning in his mind. The sniper who was really responsible for the sneak attack was someone else. The next moment, he abandoned his hidden position without hesitation, and jumped into the depths of the utility room. Almost at the same time, a scarlet energy beam shot out from a huge plush doll symbolizing the Xiangsuan district in the rest area, penetrated straight into the blind spot of the utility room's door, rubbed Seen's soles, and hit the position where he was just now. After landing, looking back at the charred marks left on the door frame, Seen couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Chapter 180. One step further. This sneak attack was extremely tricky. The 2 people hiding in the crowd were just bait to distract attention from the beginning. The real ambush came from an inconspicuous plush doll, and the mascot that symbolizes the Xiangsuan district was already standing in the rest area when Seen just hid in the utility room. In other words, this place was a trap set by the other party from the beginning, just waiting for Seen to step in ignorantly. The gunman hidden in the doll had been aiming at Seen with a blaster from beginning to end, but he had to wait until Seen's vigilance was reduced to the limit due to various changes before he finally took action. This patience and ability to seize the opportunity even allowed him to deceive the Jedi apprentice's keen perception and almost locked in the victory in an instant. Unfortunately, he failed at the last moment. The warning from the wristband allowed Seen to see through the trap in time and avoid the critical sniper. After Seen stood up from the cold floor, he began to think about how to break out from the narrow door, surrounded by a sharpshooter or 2. But he soon realized that he couldn't think about the problem at the usual pace. This rest area was a trap carefully prepared by the enemy, and the trap was likely to be more than this. If the sniper missed the first shot, they still had a backup plan. This utility room was not safe. As for the unsafe method, Seen looked around, and the metal boxes piled up in the utility room gave him an extremely bad premonition. Just as Seen fell into the trap of Blackwing and struggled to escape, the banquet hall in the middle of Xiangsuan New Dong also welcomed a long-delayed guest. "Sorry everyone, I'm late. I'm really sorry to have kept you waiting for so long." Nan Yujin walked into the venue with his usual gentle smile. In the banquet hall, the local dignitaries of Li, headed by Chen Yao, immediately stood up and raised their glasses to greet him. Chen Yao himself took the initiative to come forward and ask about his well-being. "President Yujin, we haven't seen each other for a long time. It's rare for you to come here for inspection, but you are not used to the climate and feel unwell as soon as you arrive. This makes me, the host, feel ashamed." Nan Yujin smiled and responded, "President Chen Yao, you are being polite. Although we haven't seen each other for many years, this city has always been like my second home. How can you not be used to the climate? It's just that you are old, and you don't take good care of yourself in daily life. That's why your body is weak, and you can't stand the fatigue of the journey. You have to wait for everyone in the lounge for a long time. Alas, I really envy you people who have top medical resources nearby." As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the banquet hall suddenly became a little awkward. The so-called top medical care, of course, refers to Nirvana. It's no secret that Nan Yujin wants to get involved in Nirvana. The Nan family and the Lei family have been friends for many years, so naturally they are not asking for nothing. However, those who are now qualified to sit in the banquet hall certainly know that the Lei family went back on their words on Nirvana, which made Nan Yujin suffer a loss. It's just that no one has taken this matter too seriously. First, Nan Yujin has always been an ordinary director who has been suppressed by Nan Heli in the dark, and the family resources he can control are limited. Second, the Lei family has controlled Nirvana for several generations in a row, and obviously they have their own support. Although the Lei family's means of deceiving Nanyujin are not very glorious, it is unrealistic to say how Nanyujin can retaliate against the Lei family. Then Lei Yangtze died, and his death was speechless. First he was taken hostage by a mysterious wanted criminal, and then he was mistakenly burned to death by the special forces as a wanted criminal. In the upper circles of the Kyan star system, it takes many years to meet someone who died so aggrieved. But the most well-informed people know that there are not so many coincidences in this world, and things that are too coincidental must have a pusher behind the scenes. Now it seems that the identity of the pusher is simply clear at a glance. After Lei Yangtze's death, Nanyujin did not hide his determination to swallow Nirvana, and the people in the banquet hall, in the face of Nanyujin's strong attitude, chose to retreat at the same time, and then looked at the only person who was able to compete. Chen Yao. As the person in charge of this city, Chen Yao is the only one who has the resources of the board of directors and the support of a big family. The only one who can compete with Nanyujin and resist his invasion is Chen Yao. Although Chen Yao is usually not interested in managing the city, his presence is often overshadowed by Zhang Jincheng, the person in charge of Xiangsuan district. But no one can deny that he has a strong desire for power. He does not seek to manage the city, but to manage those managers. No matter how strong Zhang Jincheng is, in Li, the top leader must be Chen Yao, and this is what Chen Yao himself pursues. However, if Nanyujin really uses Nirvana as a springboard to invade this city, then Chen Yao's position will be shaky. So, what will this power-hungry Chen family member choose when his power is in crisis? The next moment, people saw Chen Yao's choice. This middle-aged man who had been the king of Space City for many years actually said to Nanyujin with an almost flattering smile, "In this case, if Nanyujin has the spare time to stay here for a while, we are very welcome." The local dignitaries of Li could hardly believe their ears. Chen Yao actually surrendered directly like this? In the past, he did not hesitate to go to war with the Xia family in order to maintain his position as the city lord. Now facing Nanyujin, he actually backed down. Was it Lei Yangtze's death that stimulated him too much? Or, for a while, everyone in the banquet hall had their own understandings, and Zhang Jincheng, the person in charge of Xiangsuan district, had the deepest understanding. Zhang Jincheng was almost certain that Nanyujin and Chen Yao were definitely in collusion, and Lei Yangtze's death might have been the credit of the two of them. As for the conflict of interest between the two, I'm afraid that they had already made a compromise in private. Chen Yao has been the overlord of Li for so many years, and everyone thought he would stay here for life. But how can a person who has a strong desire for power, but lacks interest in managing his territory really have a strong sense of belonging to a city? He took root in Li only because there was no higher place to go. If Nanyujin could use the resources of the Nan family on the board of directors to gain further space for Chen Yao, then the other party would probably give up the interests of Nirvana in exchange for benefits. Nirvana is not Chen Yao's industry anyway. After figuring this out, Zhang Jincheng couldn't help laughing out loud, because he also thought of a way to take advantage of this opportunity to get the most benefits. Just a little courage, a little boldness, and for Zhang Jincheng, he has both. In order to go further, he even dared to make friends with a perverted killer like Xiaozi, so what else would he not dare to do? Chapter 181 Calm down. However, just when Zhang Jincheng was about to take the initiative to speak and participate in this power struggle, an extremely discordant voice sounded in the banquet hall. "I say, your pre-dinner entertainment performance is too long. Stop it quickly. It makes people lose their appetite." This abrupt voice instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. In a corner of the banquet hall, sat a young man with a cynical look on his face. While throwing a piece of cookie casually, he unscrupulously mocked the two protagonists in the banquet hall. Judging from his seat, he was just a security mercenary accompanying the guests. In this banquet hall, he had no right to speak, but he dared to mock the protagonists in the banquet hall as soon as he opened his mouth. The person who has this eccentricity is naturally the leader of Beiyin, Li Yu. As if seeing through the surprise in people's hearts, Li Yu sneered and said, Don't you think those two drama queens are the protagonists? What a bunch of useless people with no vision. "Miss, I don't think you need to waste your time here. They don't take you seriously at all. Let's leave after dinner." Hearing the word miss, people finally realized that the real protagonist of the Nan family inspection team that came to Shiangsuan district with great fanfare today was Nanheli's daughter, the young Nan Wuoyao. Nanheli was just her deputy. But people had only focused on Nan Yujin and Chen Yao before, and completely ignored the little girl sitting on the main seat, who was like a transparent person. At this time, Nan Wuoyao's bodyguard reminded them in a sarcastic tone, and the guests realized their impoliteness. Even if everyone in the upper circle now only regards Nan Wuoyao as a doll and puppet put on the table by Nan Yujin, Nan Wuoyao is the heir to Nanheli's political legacy and name after all. Necessary etiquette is always indispensable. Just as the guests present were thinking about how to smooth things over with embarrassment, suddenly, a burst of explosions was heard from afar, and a slight vibration was set off in the banquet hall. The vibration quickly spread from the ground to the surroundings and spread to everyone. The flickering lights of the candlesticks on the wall magnified the shaking several times, and projected it onto the dining table, making the snow-white tablet top like the faces of the guests at the meeting, becoming uncertain. A big explosion actually happened in the Shiangsuan Jade building! Exclamation mark. Although this iconic building of the space city has been frequently invaded by force recently, for example, not long ago a group of thugs rushed all the way to the top floor of the Jade building and shot and killed the person in charge of the Shiangsuan District 9. But now that the Jade building is heavily guarded, and there are masters from the Black Wing to guard the scene, it seems too outrageous that an explosion would happen. One of the guests couldn't help but turn around and ask the Black Wing warriors in the banquet hall, was this a terrorist attack? Upon hearing this question, the banquet hall suddenly became quiet, and everyone's attention was focused on the Black Wing warrior, hoping to get an answer from him, or to get comfort. Even if the aftermath of the explosion was still rippling, as long as the warrior could say something like stay calm, people would naturally be willing to believe him. After all, compared with the glorious record of Black Wing that was invincible, what was a mere terrorist? However, the warrior who was highly expected by the people never responded, but just stood silently beside Nan Yujin, as if he didn't care about the lives of others at all. As the candlelight flickered and the floor trembled, people suddenly realized that the situation might be a little out of control. And when they thought that even the famous Black Wing could not do anything about the invading terrorists, the guests present suddenly became restless. Some people simply put down their wine glasses, covered their stomachs with their hands, and wanted to make excuses to leave. Seeing this, Chen Yao had no choice but to step forward and try to calm people's hearts. "Everyone, please be patient. Everything is under control. With the elite of Black Wing here, no one can." Before Chen Yao finished speaking, the second explosion came. After a hard-stopping muffled sound, the shock wave spread vigorously, and the intensity was obviously greater than the previous one. The violent shaking overturned the cups on the table, and even made some elderly guests unstable, and fell to the ground. This time, Chen Yao's words were useless. The guests were in chaos almost instantly. Screams, doubts, and cries were intertwined, turning the originally elegant banquet into a mess. The banquet hall of Shiangsuan Yudong gathered the elite dignitaries of the galaxy level, Nan Yujin, the giant of Nanming capital, and his guard, Black Wing, the legal heir Nan Wuoyao, and the Silver People, as well as many leaders of the Li City Council. However, the explosion made most of the dignitaries look ugly, and the huge commotion in the banquet hall made the young man who was playing with the cookies look very interesting. He swayed his body left and right with the shock wave of the explosion, as if he was enjoying a comfortable massage, and the crying and shouting around him was a symphony to cheer him up. Then his cookies were crushed in the air by a silver hand, and the crumbs like fine sand flowed down from the silky metal fingers and fell on his chest. The robot, which was shining with beautiful metallic luster, stared down at the young man with two red eyes, as if looking at garbage. "Bay, I installed armed equipment for you, not for you to use to threaten the master. Can't I just watch for fun?" Liu complained helplessly, and then faced the red eyes that did not waver at all. He had to stand up and clap his hands vigorously. "Stop." As he spoke, Liu drew his gun from his waist and fired. His movements were so fast that even the Black Wing warriors who were responsible for guarding Nanyujin in the room didn't have time to react. The blaster beam came from the bottom up and blew up the chandelier hanging above the banquet hall. The expensive decorative chandelier fell and hit the table full of wine and food. The huge sound shocked everyone present. And then, Liu pointed his gun at Nanyujin again. Because when he turned the gun, the Black Wing warriors had already pointed their guns at him. "What do you want to do?" Number 18 shouted, and the blaster in his hand stretched forward, pointing the muzzle directly at Liu's forehead, looking aggressive. Number 18 was directly responsible for Nanyujin's safety. Now Nanyujin was pointed at with a gun and faced life-threatening danger, but he didn't have time to stop it. This was undoubtedly a serious dereliction of duty for him, and the consequences of dereliction of duty were absolutely unbearable for number 18, who came from a remote mountain village. Liu just sneered at this and said, "Calm down, you bunch of rubbish." Chapter 182 Courage. In response to Liu's defense, number 18 just roared, "Put away your gun." Haha. Liu didn't care at all and didn't even look at number 18. The muzzle of the gun was still locked on Nanyujin's head. Number 18 was gritting his teeth in hatred, but he could do nothing. Turning his head to comfort Nanyujin, he found that the wealthy middle-aged man next to him was not panicked at all, but looked at him with interest, not worried about his own safety. In a crisis, the employer can maintain a relaxed attitude, which is of course a rare thing for a bodyguard. But number 18 felt that Nanyujin's leisurely attitude only contrasted his embarrassment, and for a while, his hatred surged. "Don't grit your teeth like that, the grinding sound makes people feel sick." Liu mocked unscrupulously, and then said, "But thanks to your ugly appearance, the trash are finally quiet now." Number 18 was stunned when he heard the words, and then realized that as Liu caused a greater commotion, the guests in the banquet hall really didn't care about panic. Everyone's eyes were focused on the people who were holding guns in the standoff, and the slight vibration under their feet was completely ignored. "Okay, you can put your guns away. If you keep holding them like this, people will only look down on you." Black Wing, even more. Number 18 was furious, and all he could think of was how to cut Liu into pieces. However, at this moment, the door of the banquet hall opened with a swish, and accompanied by the sound of heavy armor colliding, the leader of Black Wing, Jiuo Xiaoming walked in quickly. As soon as he entered the door, Jiuo Xiaoming raised his hand and ordered, "Everyone put down your guns." Number 18 had 10,000 buds in his mind, but the strict training made him obey the captain's order at the first time and put down the blaster. The rest of the teammates followed silently. After all the Black Wing's warriors had put away their weapons, Liu slowly lowered his arm, turned his eyes away and said, "If you had come earlier, there wouldn't be so much trouble." "Well, it was my mistake, I'm sorry." Jiuo Xiaoming apologized generously, which surprised everyone, not only the Black Wing's warriors, but also the onlookers. A wealthy businessman from the Xiangsuan district asked in disbelief, "Captain Jiuo, that man was pointing a gun at Mr. Nanyujin." Before Jiuo Xiaoming could speak, Nanyujin himself laughed and took the initiative to excuse Liu, saying, "But if he hadn't pointed the gun at me in time, he would have been dead." "Ah, how could he be dead? Who wants to kill him?" "Haha. Even someone like me who has never touched a gun can see that many people here want him dead." Nanyujin said this and didn't explain any more because smart people should be able to figure it out. When Liu raised his gun to shoot down the chandelier, the people of Black Wing almost immediately raised their guns, but the muzzles were pointed directly at Liu. Anyone who was careful to observe could see that the people of Black Wing wanted to kill Liu as soon as possible, and Liu's sudden firing in the banquet hall undoubtedly gave Black Wing a reasonable reason to eliminate him. In the banquet hall, the Black Wing had more people and more sophisticated weapons. The only way Liu could counter it was to exchange his life for his life, to exchange Nanyujin's life for Liu's own life. However, Nanyujin's explanation made his personal bodyguard number 18 a little puzzled. The many people that Nanyujin mentioned undoubtedly referred to Black Wing, but why did Black Wing want that young man to die? Because Miss Nanwuya refused the protection of Black Wing and insisted on hiring a civilian mercenary team? To be honest, this matter did make the people of Blackwing a little indignant, but they didn't want to kill people for this. Blackwing as an elite team directly under the board of directors, they are not so magnanimous. Unfortunately, no 18's doubts were not answered. Just when he was full of doubts, Guo Xiaoming assigned him a new task. Go to the monitoring room to replace number 2. Number 18 really didn't understand why he was replaced at this time, but the captain's order was unquestionable, so he could only suppress his doubts and leave quickly. After number 18 left the banquet hall, Li Yu curled his lips and mocked, "Poor stray dog, abandoned by the owner without knowing it." Guo Xiaoming ignored Li Yu's sarcasm and asked solemnly, "You should give me an explanation for the explosion downstairs." As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar in the banquet hall, because Guo Xiaoming's words were undoubtedly accusing Li Yu of causing the explosion. Li Yu responded, "You want an explanation? Okay, I'll explain it to you. Not long ago, my men found explosives buried in a utility room downstairs. The hiding place was tricky and the location was exquisite. Once detonated, the worst case scenario is that the whole building will collapse. Obviously, there are terrorists who have bad intentions towards my employer. However, my men couldn't find the murderer who buried the explosives for a while, so they took advantage of the situation and secretly changed the location of the explosives and placed them near the remote detonation point. Captain Guo, don't tell me that the person who buried the bomb was Blackwing." The sarcasm of this sentence was unprecedented. Several Blackwing warriors beside Guo Xiaoming suddenly lost their patience. The collision of armor and guns made the atmosphere in the banquet hall tense again. Guo Xiaoming raised his right hand high. The black glove symbolized his unquestionable status in the team and immediately stopped the commotion of his men. Then he no longer paid attention to Li Yu, but lowered his eyes and focused his attention on the woman who had always been ignored. From beginning to end, Nan Wuoyao, who hired Li Yu, did not say a word. This attitude made Guo Xiaoming a little curious, but more of a vigilant one. "Boss Nan." Before Guo Xiaoming began to test, Li Yu interrupted without hesitation. "Talk to me if you have anything to say. At present, I'm the full representative of the young lady to communicate with the outside world." Guo Xiaoming chose to ignore Li Yu and asked Nan Wuoyao, "Boss Nan, the people you hired are causing trouble now." Nan Wuoyao was questioned by the leader of Blackwing in a cold tone, and her mentality was obviously shaken. However, before she could speak, Li Yu took over the topic generously. "Young lady, if you speak now, it is equivalent to lowering your status to that of a mere lackey. Let the lackey you hired do the work of biting people." When Nan Wuoyao heard this, she nodded immediately and then turned her head away without even looking at Guo Xiaoming. This attitude is a great humiliation for the people of Blackwing, not to mention that Nan Wuoyao has not officially inherited the family power. Even Nan Heli had never been so rude to the leader of Blackwing. However, after getting this result, Guo Xiaoming was not angry, but looked at Nan Wuoyao with a slightly admiring look. Because what Li Yu said was not wrong. In this situation, Nan Wuoyao did not need to personally respond to Guo Xiaoming's questioning. No matter how high the status of Blackwing is, it is essentially just a tool under the jurisdiction of the board of directors. There is an insurmountable gap between it and a true upper-class aristocrat like Nan Wuoyao. However, given Nan Wuoyao's current shaky state, he has the courage to act so tough in front of Guo Xiaoming, which is very commendable. Although this courage should be more than half from Li Yu's support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Accusations. Guo Xiaoming did not embarrass Nan Wuoyao because this was not in line with his employer's original intention. Since Nan Wuoyao wanted to limit this dispute to the agent level and Nan Yujin did not object, Guo Xiaoming would do his duty as an agent and end up fighting with Li Yu. In fact, this is more in line with Guo Xiaoming's own wishes. Instead of biting Nan Wuoyao, Guo Xiaoming actually wanted to fight the leader of the Silver Organization. Silver, this person who dares to openly accept the abandonment of the Security Bureau and is also openly active in the Kyanxing Galaxy as a non-governmental organization, can be said to be a thorn in the side of the Kyankan group in the eyes of many people. In the board of directors, some people have long proposed sanctions or even wiped them out. But the Nun family and the Ma family have always voted firmly against the sanctions bill, so that Beiyin has been at large for a long time. Jiuo Xiaoming was not interested in the positions and interests of the Nun family and Ma family. As a tool of the board of directors, he never likes to think offside. However, even if he only looks at Silver from the perspective of the leader of Blackwing, the threat of this private organization is too great. It can actually recruit the abandoned sons of the Security Bureau. Jiuo Xiaoming knows better than anyone the weight of the abandoned sons of Anping and Lunan. They are elite soldiers that have been rare to see for decades in the entire history of the Security Bureau. Anyone can easily lead an elite special force team, complete all kinds of incredible tasks. If we only count their combat capabilities, even in the Blackwings organization, they are the top experts. It is not an exaggeration to say priceless. Only rotten politicians who have never even touched a blaster would stretch out their pampered fingers, clumsily press the calculator, calculate the maintenance costs and economic benefits of these elites, and finally resolutely put these elites, the elite among them, are treated as outcasts. Afterwards, he was still complacent and thought he had a plan. If it were up to Jiuo Xiaoming to make the decision, he would never give up on Anping and others, even if he sacrificed tens or even hundreds of millions of Kyankan coins. The value of the top talents cannot be measured by money, let alone bought with money. Treating such talents as abandoned pawns will have an inestimable impact on the morale of others. After Anping and others defected, the Security Bureau was almost in ruins and failed to recover in 10 years. If it weren't for the diligent and loyal Xia Yan and the wanton, but powerful Xia Zi and the Bureau, the Security Bureau would not even be able to suppress pirate organizations like King Lang. It is almost unimaginable that such a talent would be recruited by a mere civil organization. After leaving the Security Bureau, what kind of organization can suppress those traitorous generals who don't even look down on the Security Bureau? In the database of the board of directors, Beiyin has always been just a non-governmental organization that is parasitic on the Nun family and handles dirty work for them, and is far less valued by Anping and others. The intelligence experts of the database came to a conclusion after many seminars, but it was incredible. They really couldn't think of a more reasonable explanation, so they believed that the most likely reason for Beiyin's recruitment of Anping and others was a coincidence. What's even more incredible is that the board of directors actually recognized this conclusion and really regarded this matter as a coincidence. Then not only did they no longer pay attention to An and other rebel generals, they didn't even pay much attention to Beiyin. Jiuo Xiaoming would not comment on the rights and wrongs of the board of directors, but he knew very well that the young leader of Silver in front of him must be much more powerful and troublesome than what was recorded in the database. Therefore, he was unwilling to let go of this opportunity of testing. There is an old saying in the Kyan Galaxy, be polite before fighting. Jiuo Xiaoming said solemnly, before using force, I will give you a chance to explain. Li Yu, what is your reason for causing the explosion? Li Yu's response to Jiuo Xiaoming's use of force, the threat fell on deaf ears, and he just smiled and said, Captain Jiuo can't understand the Kyankan language of the common people. Then let me change it to Captain Jiuo's hometown dialect, and repeat it again. My men discovered, you should know very well, that those explosives are Blackwing, specially placed it. Li Yu asked, why should I know? Did anyone tell me about the situation? Did anyone remind us that there are explosives in the utility room on the 17th floor? We should be careful when passing by. Question mark? Absolutely not. You never said a word to us from beginning to end, as if you want the people we pass by to be blown up by explosives. Jiuo Xiaoming retorted, I should have warned you, Chiangsa when you dang. The security work will be taken over by Blackwing. Your people should not move around at will in the future. Li Yu said, I should have told you back before. Blackwing is not qualified to tell us what to do and get paid. Give me 5 billion Kyankan coins. Don't even let me move around as you please. So, are you trying to hinder us on purpose? Jiuo Xiaoming asked coldly. You were the ones who got in the way first. Don't come here to slander me. Li Yu retorted confidently. Why should we stay where we are and not move around? If there is a problem with Nan Wuiao's safety, will you be responsible? Jiuo Xiaoming sneered. We should be responsible. What a should be? Li Yu sneered back. Nan Wuiao didn't invite you. How can you have the shame to say that you should be responsible? Black Yi, if you like to take responsibility so much, why don't you take responsibility for the deaths of Nan Heli and Nan Kai and Ihu? I don't ask too much, just apologize for being naked as a leader. Li Yu's speech was extremely bold. The silence in the banquet hall made many people subconsciously suspect that they were deaf, until some nervous and rapid breathing reminded them that everything was just because the atmosphere was too tense. Throughout the Kyan galaxy, Nan Heli's death was an extremely sensitive topic. It involved too many interests and too deep a conspiracy, so that only the common people on the streets dared to talk nonsense at the dinner table. Once he was in a high position, he had to be cautious in his words and actions, pretending that he knew nothing about Nan Heli's death and was not interested. What the board of directors has done during this period is to encourage everyone to ignore it. But Li Yu's outspokenness broke everyone's tacit understanding, especially when he brought up this topic in front of Nan Wuiao and Nan Yujin. It made people feel a little creepy. No matter how embarrassed the Nan family is, it is still one of the 4 deep-rooted families. Even Nan Wuiao, a troubled little princess, has a much more noble and distinguished status than Chen Yao, who has been making waves in Li for many years. This time it was just Nan Yujin who stood in front and stole the limelight. Jiuo Xiaoming began to feel a headache. He did not expect that Li Yu would act so boldly. Although Li Yu in the information is cynical and slippery, he knows how to measure and behave. Therefore, after the death of his great supporter Nan Heli, he should keep a low profile and be a talented person. But obviously this time the intelligence failed again. In fact, it is not difficult to imagine that someone who can conquer Anping and others can use common sense to think about it. Jiuo Xiaoming laughed at himself, then changed the subject and asked, Li Yu, you are obstructing us in every possible way here, because the wanted assassin is a member of Silver Right. Chapter 184, Years of Planning. Nan Wuiao refused the protection of Black Wing and insisted on hiring the civilian armed organization Silver. This was abnormal, which caused a lot of controversy. Now the members of Silver actually took this opportunity to sneak into Xiangsu and Yudang and try to assassinate Nan Yujin. The implications of this are really terrifying. Li Yu would not accept all the accusations. He sneered and said, although Beiyin is a civilian organization and cannot be regarded as a member of your Black Wing, we have a bottom line. We only accept people with clean backgrounds. We will never accept people like Ziazi, even if they are from a famous family and hold a high position. We think they are dirty. Jiuo Xiaoming said, you know I'm not talking about Ziazi, the assassin. Of course I know you don't want to mention Ziazi. Li Yu interrupted sharply and changed the subject. Although he is not from Black Wing, he is the jewel in the palm of the Security Bureau. No matter how many crimes he commits, he will be protected by the bosses of the board of directors. As the lackeys of the board of directors, you, Black Wing, must cover up for the board of directors. These words made the air in the banquet hall even colder. Many guests already felt it difficult to breathe, and at the same time, regretted why they attended such a banquet. Some words, even if heard by the ears, are a kind of treason. Li Yu dared to ridicule the board of directors in public, because he had the Nan family's strong support, but the ordinary guests present did not have such a strong backing. Next, before Jiuo Xiaoming could refute, Li Yu smiled and said, I suggest that those who don't want to listen can leave first, because what I'm going to say next may be more exciting. As soon as this was said, countless eyes focused on Jiuo Xiaoming, as if they had been pardoned. Jiuo Xiaoming was silent for a while, and said, No 11, take the guests to rest nearby. A tall and burly black armored warrior responded in a deep voice. After a while, the banquet hall seemed empty. Most of the idle people were taken away from the venue. Only core personnel such as Chen Yao and Zhang Jincheng stayed in place. Li Yu smiled and said, from now on, let's speak human language. Jiuo Xiaoming snorted coldly, and his evaluation of Li Yu in his heart was raised a few points. He just raised the issue of Xin's identity, which was a very sharp step forward. In front of so many guests, if Li Yu cannot clear up Xin's identity and behavior, then Beiyin and Nan Wuoyao, who protected Beiyin, will be dragged into the water together. But can Li Yu clear up? It's impossible. No matter how Li Yu talks, Jiuo Xiaoming only needs to show a video to nail Xin's crime directly. In that video, Xin agreed to cooperate with Xia Zi to assassinate Nan Yujin in front of Xia Jiang and Zhang Jincheng. In the face of such ironclad evidence, all the words of defense will appear empty and weak. Jiuo Xiaoming believes that Li Yu can never guess that he has such a video in his hands, just as Zhang Jincheng never knew that the underground space he regarded as a hidden refuge had hidden Black Wing cameras from the beginning. In fact, Li Yu may not have guessed that Black Wing is an armed executive organization directly under the board of directors, and its intelligence authority is even higher than that of the General Security Bureau. Xia Yan's plan to frame the GD Master and Apprentice was perfected by Black Wing. In Jiuo Xiaoming's opinion, once the video is exposed, Li Yu has only two options to deal with it in a hurry. One is to cut ties with Xin and deny that he belongs to Silver, but Jiuo Xiaoming also has enough evidence to prove the relationship between Xin and Silver. The second is to expose Xin's GD identity and use the reputation and prestige accumulated by the GD Order for countless years to endorse Xin's behavior and prove his innocence. But in the Kyan Galaxy, the Republic's set of values does not apply, and people may not be convinced by the word GD. Li Yu chose neither of the two paths, but bypassed Xin and went straight to attack Xia Zi, and the offensive was fierce, not only biting Xia Zi and the Security Bureau, but even not letting go of the board of directors. This mad dog-like attitude is not important to whitewash Xin, but to scare the audience present, and not dare to listen anymore. Without the audience, whether Xin is guilty or not is actually irrelevant. Li Yu's counterattack was unconventional, but it also hit the key point, making Jiuo Xiaoming's full calculations fall into vain. But Jiuo Xiaoming did not feel discouraged. Being able to witness Li Yu's performance was already an important gain for him. Next, all that was left was to do his job. Jiuo Xiaoming looked at the young man in front of him who seemed to be sure of victory, and reached out to switch the communicator on his helmet to public mode. The next moment, a steady and hoarse voice sounded in the banquet hall. "Captain, this is number 5. I'm sorry that we were ambushed. Number 3 and number 7 were seriously injured and need immediate support." Jiuo Xiaoming said, "The reinforcement have already arrived. Remember, make that guy pay the price." "Yes." No 5 steady voice concealed an irrepressible murderous intent. Afterwards, Jiuo Xiaoming cut off the communication and asked Li Yu in a calm tone, "You just said that you wanted to listen to others. Then I will tell you." Li Yu smiled and said, "I heard that the style of Black Wing is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. As a result, after you were ambushed, you couldn't find the real murderer, so you took it out on an irrelevant passerby?" Jiuo Xiaoming said, "Because taking out your anger on that irrelevant passerby will make the real murderer the most uncomfortable. Maybe halfway through the operation, the real murderer will jump out by himself. What do you think?" Li Yu said, "Then I suggest that you just massacre the city and kill all the millions of people in Li. At that time, let alone the real murderer, there will be no murder at all." Jiuo Xiaoming said, "The lives of millions of people are too heavy, but the life of a mere one person is not the same." Li Yu said, "Oh. In the eyes of Captain Jiuo, the life of a mere one person is insignificant? Compared with the overall situation, the life of an individual is naturally insignificant." "Well said. I feel relieved that Captain Jiuo can be so careless about human lives." After Li Yu finished speaking, he took out the communicator that had been turned on from his jacket pocket and said, "Did you hear that? Old Cairo, do it. The life of just one person is insignificant." The next moment, a sharp blaster gun sounded from the communicator. Almost at the same time, Jiuo Xiaoming's communicator rang with the voice of number 5, who was both shocked and angry. "Captain, someone attacked us. Is it Cairo Yankang? Number 3 seems to be in trouble." "Damn, he." No 5's voice stopped abruptly. The last sound that came from the communicator was the sharp sound of a blaster gun shooting, and Jiuo Xiaoming's face was so gloomy that it was chilling. Other people in the banquet hall also showed incredible expressions. Qiao Yankang. This name is not unfamiliar to people like Chen Yao and Zhang Jincheng. He is an honest man who has been working diligently as the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Health for nearly 10 years. He has no strengths, but no weaknesses. Every politician who is good at calculating will consider him, but will not seriously consider him. Over the years, this middle-aged man has worked diligently in Xiangsu and Yudang, and has been living with the upper and lower classes day and night, but no one has noticed any flaws in him. So now no one can imagine that Qiao Yankang is actually Li Yu's hidden player left in Xiangsu and Yudang. Chapter 185 No Spare Time. In fact, even after hearing Black Wing's number 5 reveal Qiao Yankang's identity, Chen Yao and others still found it unbelievable. Their first reaction was that there might be some misunderstanding. Haha, it's normal that Leo Qiao is not disguised, because he is not pretending to be anything. He has always been an extremely serious person. When he works here, every minute and every second is worthy of the salary you pay him. And after get off work, all his thoughts are on his wife and children, and there is no handle on him in the hands of others, so he can enjoy it all with peace of mind. In fact, if I hadn't just contacted him and issued an order, he wouldn't even know that I would come here today, let alone that today he would have to give up his daily life. Hearing this, Zhang Jincheng and others only felt that the matter was even more absurd. If Qiao Yankang really enjoyed his current life seriously, he had no reason to give up everything and become a pawn of silver. He had a stable and comfortable life in Li, a decent job, and even a happy family. Such a person is willing to give up everything for Li Yu. What did silver give him? Question mark. The more frightening question is that even such a person can be used by Li Yu, so who else in Xiangsu and Yudong is absolutely safe? As if seeing through people's doubts and fears, Li Yu chuckled and said, "Don't worry, people like Leo Qiao are extremely rare. We have developed for so many years, and there are no more than 10 people in Xiangsu and Yudong who can really be used. Now 1/10 of them have been exposed. You can rest assured." This sentence, which is hard to tell whether it is true or false, undoubtedly aggravated people's fear. If even Qiao Yankang is only 1/10, how terrifying will the rest be? So much so that Chen Yao and Zhang Jincheng looked at each other unconsciously and saw a ridiculous vigilance in each other's eyes. The other party is indeed a powerful figure, but is the word big man really safe now? However, if Qiao Yankang had not hidden so perfectly with the consistent style of Black Wing, it would be impossible for someone to plot so tragically. In fact, due to the absolute advantage of the Board of Directors intelligence network, Black Wing has not been successfully plotted for many years. However, among the people present, only Jiuo Xiaoming, the leader of Black Wing, remained unmoved. He asked in a cold voice, "Li Yu, are you declaring war on Black Wing?" Li Yu replied, "Declaring war? You were the first to start, and now you ask me if I'm declaring war? You knew that Scene was my subordinate, but you set a trap for him without even saying hello. If I hadn't been alert enough and awakened the hidden player in time to crack the trap, Scene would at least be crippled by the explosion. Then you ask me if I'm declaring war on Black Wing. How do you want me to answer you? Commit suicide in front of you to prove that I have no intention of declaring war?" Jiuo Xiaoming ignored Li Yu's explanation. He just nodded silently and said, "Then, from now on, wait." Suddenly, a voice that was beyond everyone's expectations interrupted Jiuo Xiaoming. Nan Yujin sat in the VIP seat, raised his hand gently, and said, "Let the people below solve the problems, and we should not intensify the conflicts." Jiuo Xiaoming looked at Nan Yujin meaningfully and asked, "Boss Nan Yujin, you should know that your current statement is a betrayal of the trust of Black Wing in you." Nan Yujin said, "I know, but as a director of Kyankan Group, I cannot betray my duties first. It is my duty to safeguard the interests of the group and the unity and stability of the galaxy. When necessary, my personal interests and feelings can all be abandoned. At present, a full-scale war with Silver is not in the overall interests of the group. So my choice is self-evident. The trust of Blackwing is indeed valuable, but compared with the duties that Blackwing should abide by, what about it? After a pause, Nanujin smiled. Captain Guo, Blackwing is the elite you trained. Have more confidence in them. Guo Xiaoming nodded vigorously with a calm expression. Then he turned on the communicator and said, "You all, did you hear clearly? As long as it's not an all-out war, just do whatever you want." At the same time, Scene looked at the messy scene after the continuous explosions in front of him, and a strong sense of absurdity surged in his heart. The last moment, he looked at the metal boxes piled in the utility room, and the scene of the Blackwing soldiers burying bombs in them had clearly emerged in his mind. However, the next moment, the explosion that resounded in his ears came from the direction of the enemy. In a trance, there were cries and shouts outside the utility room. Scene was startled when he heard it and subconsciously wanted to go out to save people. However, at this moment, the door of the utility room opened and a slightly bloated figure walked in quickly. When Scene saw that person, he couldn't believe his eyes. Kaio Yankang? Kaio Yankang, the executive deputy director of the Xiangsuan District Health Department, came to Scene with a vigorous pace that was completely inconsistent with his body shape. He looked him up and down and asked in a deep voice, "Are you not injured?" Scene was stunned for a moment, not knowing how to respond to the inexplicable person and inexplicable kindness. "I'm Liu's man and your comrade in arms. If you want to live, be alert," Kaio Yankang said, reaching out and patting Scene's shoulder. The fat palm contained unexpectedly strong power, which made Scene's half-body tilt. However, the pain brought by this impact also made the Jedi apprentice completely sober. Now he has no capital to question the other party's intentions and intentions. If Kaio Yankang really wants to harm him, there is no need to deliberately expose his identity. He just needs to wait for the people of Blackwing to surround him. If there was no unexpected explosion outside the utility room, Scene would have been at the end of his rope. Kaio Yankang said, "All the people from Blackwing have gathered. The road below is blocked. We have no chance of winning in a head-on confrontation. Let's break through upwards." Scene nodded to show his understanding. Although breaking through upwards was completely opposite to his original escape route, considering that the original plan had been completely seen through by Blackwing, perhaps it would be more efficient to do the opposite. "Follow me closely, don't waste time, and don't waste opportunities. We don't have the luxury of mercy." Chapter 186 Hostage Invalidity. Scene nodded again in silence. "Okay." Kaio Yankang said no more, untied a blaster from his back, and threw it to Scene, and then the two came to the door, turned sideways and pressed the switch to open the door of the utility room. Almost at the same time, a blaster beam came in from a distance, brushed Kaio Yankang's cheek, and hit a metal box. Kaio Yankang didn't change his expression, just gave Scene a wink. Almost at the same time, Scene had completed the aiming and shooting, and a sharp blaster beam shot out in the opposite direction along the same track, causing a tall and burly Blackwing warrior in the office area to fall down in pain. Kaio Yankang glanced at Scene again and didn't say much. Scene's tactical understanding ability is very good. He didn't need him to tell him anything more. He could understand the tactical intention and completed the counterattack at the moment when Kaio Yankang opened the door to attract firepower. However, he was still a little soft-hearted. The counterattack shot had a chance to penetrate the opponent's vital point, but at the last moment he chose the shoulder. Of course, Scene could explain that he was not merciful and did not kill, because a wounded soldier who had lost his combat capability would be a greater burden than a dead body and would take up more energy from Blackwing. But this statement would not work for Blackwing. As the most trusted armed group of Kyankan group, Blackwing may not be the unit with the strongest individual combat capability, but it must be the most disciplined and ruthless unit. They would do anything to complete the mission, and this naturally includes the lives of individuals. Scene should have guessed this, even if he didn't know it, but he still didn't kill anyone. It may not be because he had thought it over carefully, but it was instinctive. Kaio Yankang quickly weighed the situation in his mind, waved to Scene to follow, and then quickly jumped out of the utility room and ran towards a spare freight elevator in the distance. Scene followed closely behind him, and when he passed by the office area, he was shocked. The explosion scene created by Kao Yang Kang was very tragic. Although he did not choose a place where people gathered, the strong explosion turned the clean and bright office area into a sea of fire. Even the fire extinguisher sprayed from the ceiling seemed weak and powerless. The explosion affected some innocent people. Many of the health department staff who followed Kao Yang Kang to hunt down the wanted criminals were slightly injured. Although the injuries were not fatal, for these ordinary workers, they probably had never experienced a bloody experience in their lives, let alone an explosion right in front of them. Most people were only concerned with crying and running around blindly. As a Jedi apprentice, the instinct ingrained in his heart made Sin subconsciously want to help, until he saw the enemy at the explosion site. It was the Blackwing trio who came to plot against him. One of them was obviously targeted by Kao Yang Kang, and was charred all over. He barely managed to survive by wearing black armor, but he was dying. Sharpshooter number 3, who was hiding in a stuffed doll, fell in a pool of blood, with a charred hole in his chest, and died with his eyes open. The strong man number 5 who was attacking the enemy had his right shoulder pierced through, and with other injuries caused by the explosion. He basically lost his combat capability, but the raging fighting spirit in his eyes was so real that it made Sin's scalp numb. Now he didn't have the luxury of saving people. Thinking of Kao Yang Kang's instructions, Sin forced himself to harden his heart and leave the scene as soon as possible. However, just as Sin was about to rush into the elevator shaft, he heard the sturdy number 5 behind him struggling and roaring, "If you dare to leave, I will kill her." Sin turned around in surprise and saw that number 5, whose right shoulder was disabled, actually raised his left hand and held a short blaster tightly, aiming at a female clerk who fell to the ground due to a sprained ankle. "You." Before Sin could speak, a blaster beam was close to his ear, from back to front, and accurately pierced No 5's forehead. Kao Yang Kang stood in front of the elevator shaft, slowly retracted the blaster, and said with a breath, "Next time, you should shoot. I haven't held a gun for a long time, and my shooting skills are not very good. If I had missed the shot just now, the hostage would be dead. He will keep killing until you stop." Sin nodded silently. While the two were talking, the freight elevator door rumbled open. This time, without Kao Yang Kang's reminder, Sin also reacted in time. He immediately raised his gun and fired continuously, knocking down several fully armed mercenaries in the elevator. Then, Sin asked, "Are these the security personnel in Yudong?" Kao Yang Kang said, "They are our enemies. Now we only have enemies in front of us. There is no need to distinguish where they came from." After that, Kao Yang Kang turned the muzzle of the gun and killed the wounded soldiers lying on the ground one by one. Sin did not stop him, but just raised his head and did not look at the bodies on the ground. Because if you think rationally, this is indeed a more correct judgment. Unlike the warriors of Blackwing, these hired security mercenaries generally cherish their lives. If they feel a real threat of death, they may shrink back when the battle comes. This is undoubtedly much better than charging forward recklessly for the bounty. Killing the few people in front of you can avoid a greater killing, which is indeed more cost effective. Xyz's killing theory always demonstrates its effectiveness in a way that Sin does not like. Chapter 187, Strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. After killing the mercenaries who came on the freight elevator, Sin and Kao Yang Kang gained a brief peace. With the rumbling sound of the elevator climbing up, Sin finally couldn't help but ask his own questions. "Liu asked you to help me?" Kao Yang Kang nodded, "Yes. Besides, what else did he say?" Kao Yang Kang said, "Time is limited." He didn't have time to say too much. In addition to the necessary mission information, he only let me do what is convenient. Besides, I don't want to know your relationship with him. Sin saw that the other party was not in a good mood to talk and temporarily suppressed the urge to continue asking questions, but the doubts in his mind became more and more intense. It was of course a good thing that he could get Liu's help when he was at his wit's end, but why did Liu help him like this? It was not a wise move to let his men confront Blackwing head on in Chiangsa and Yudong. Was it because his identity had been exposed? No, I'm afraid his identity had been exposed a long time ago, but Liu used the reason that the organization does not ask about the past to evade the past. But for Liu, the Jedi apprentice is a rare and valuable weapon, so he would rather take a huge risk to protect Sin from falling into the hands of others. Sin was thinking about it and suddenly heard Kao Yang Kang say, "You should owe Liu a lot of money, right?" I still owe him 1 million. As Sin said, he felt that his whole idea was shattered. So there is such an explanation? Liu regarded me as a debtor, so he specially sent an undercover to help me escape. Because if I fall into the hands of Blackwing, the 1 million debt will become a bad debt. Exclamation mark. No wonder. Kao Yang Kang snorted, that guy is only so active when it comes to collecting debts. Sin couldn't help but ask, just because of a debt of 1 million, he is at odds with Blackwing. No matter how you calculate the account, it's a loss. Kao Yang Kang looked at Sin seriously and said, a person who only knows how to settle accounts is not qualified to be the leader of Silver. But, Kao Yang Kang sighed lightly, as if he was impatient with Sin's dullness, and then explained, debts must be collected. This is Silver's code of conduct, and upholding principles is priceless. After that, Kao Yang Kang added, or to put it in a simpler way, if an organization is willing to turn against Blackwing for a debt of 1 million, then who else dares to owe a debt and not pay it back? And, as he spoke, Kao Yang Kang's greasy face suddenly wrinkled into a cruel smile. Haha, just Blackwing, a bunch of spoiled dogs, so what if we become enemies? The next moment, a deafening explosion sounded overhead, and then the elevator began to shake violently under the impact wave. Don't panic. Kao Yang Kang grinned. It's just that the explosives buried in the upper elevator shaft were detonated. The idiots of Blackwing really don't learn their lessons. Sin was quite surprised. How powerful is Kao Yang Kang? While playing the role of the harmless Deputy Minister of Health, he also had time to bury explosives everywhere to plot against Blackwing. However, before he could think about it, Kao Yang Kang restrained his smile and said in a deep voice, but the trap on the upper floor has been triggered, which means that the road to the top floor is blocked. Let's take another way. As he said that, Kao Yang Kang directly opened the elevator control panel, exposing the intricate circuit inside. Among the cables and components like a dense forest maze, he chose a thin wire without hesitation and stretched out his hand to tear it apart. The elevator, which was shaking and rising, suddenly stopped, and the lights inside went out. Only a fluorescent stick on Kao Yang Kang's waist was still emitting red light. Go from the top. Kao Yang Kang pointed to the top of his head with the faint red light, and then said to Sin, help me later. Sin was a little confused. Kao Yang Kang said unhappily, do you think I can climb up by myself with my body? Hurry up, okay. Sin was a little amused. He didn't expect that this seemingly mature and experienced warrior in front of him couldn't climb up. But looking back on his previous actions, it is not difficult to find that, although Kao Yang Kang is decisive and has a mature mentality, his skills are really hard to praise. After a short distance from the utility room to the elevator shaft, this fat middle-aged man was already sweating profusely. His physical fitness perfectly fits the image of middle-aged social animal who has been focusing on paperwork for a long time and neglected exercise. Perhaps it was this perfect disguise that allowed him to suddenly appear as a surprise soldier under everyone's noses. As Sin thought about it, he leaned down and crossed his hands in front of his knees to provide a step for Kao Yang Kang to move upward. Then, the huge body of more than 250 kilograms stepped on Sin's hand with momentum, causing the Jedi apprentice to almost lose his balance and fall backwards. Fortunately, Sin used the force to strengthen his body in time, and his waist and abdominal muscles burst out with amazing toughness, stabilizing his upper body, and then exerted force with both arms to lift Kao Yang Kang up. The heavy middle-aged man did not disappoint Sin's efforts. He jumped up with Sin's support, barely grabbed the edge of the top board with both hands, and then hung in the air like bacon drying. After about 2 or 3 seconds of stalemate, Kao Yang Kang roared angrily with a tremor, why don't you go up and help me? Sin realized with a smile that this middle-aged man with perfect camouflage and tactical awareness had become so weak. However, it has been proved that physical weakness does not affect Kao Yang Kang's role. When Scene followed Kao Yang Kang out of the emergency braked elevator and followed the maintenance passage in the elevator shaft to the 123rd floor of the Shiangsu and Jade building. This quiet space reserved for senior cadres to rest and entertain was already filled with chaotic footsteps and the rude shouts of mercenaries. Blackwing mobilized all the security forces in the Shiangsu and Jade building to block all the escape routes to the top floor. After noticing that Scene and others had emergency braked the elevator near the 120th floor, they used the communicator to ask all nearby mercenaries to gather. The mercenaries, dazzled by the high bounty, ran at a speed comparable to that of a high-speed elevator and immediately swarmed and occupied all floors near the 120th floor. Chapter 188, Evil Heart. However, when the two sides met on the 123rd floor, they just passed each other peacefully. Because Kao Yang Kang immediately opened a secret passage in the wall and took Scene away through the secret passage. This secret passage is located on the edge of the art exhibition area on the 123rd floor. The exquisite architectural structure makes the existence of the secret passage perfectly hidden by various elegant artworks. What is even more exquisite or even funny is that the outer side of the secret passage is set to be one-way light transmissive, so that the fugitives can move forward leisurely while enjoying the ugly appearance of the pursuers scratching their heads on the other side of the wall. The secret passage winds upward like a hidden parasite, extending along the internal structure gap of the Shiangsu and Jade building to the 125th floor. After opening a heavy gate, you can see that there is a small hangar here, in which more than a number of exquisite and luxurious airships and a narrow and long, Shenlong class armed transport ship are neatly parked. Kao Yang Kang panted slightly and explained, "This is the emergency escape passage designed by Shiangsu and Yudong for senior cadres. The transport ship can carry you back to Zun as quickly as possible, or anywhere else." Scene walked to the door of the hangar, but did not rush forward. Instead, he looked around vigilantly, and his right hand directly touched the hilt of the sword at his waist. Then Kao Yang Kang suddenly stopped and gently raised the blaster. The next moment, a storm of blaster beams rushed over. A group of warriors in black clothes and black armor, with thin cables hanging around their waists, poured firepower madly at Scene and Kao Yang Kang from the exit of the hangar. When Scene and Kao Yang Kang were winding along the secret passage, Black Wings directly sent a surprise force from the outside of Shiangsu and Yudong, forming an ambush just in time. Fortunately, Scene and Kao Yang Kang were both very alert. At the critical moment, they dodged in time and hid behind the heavy gate at the entrance of the hangar. Kao Yang Kang tried to even out his breathing while cursing. The lackeys of the board of directors are really alert. They learned their lesson after being fooled once. I thought they were all killed on the way here. Scene was once again secretly surprised at the other party's ability to act. When did this middle-aged man run to set a trap for Blackwing again? But now there was no time to ask in detail. In any case, the ambush of Blackwing arrived at the hangar one step ahead and set up an ambush. Although the first round of concentrated fire just now was unsuccessful, it also completely blocked the way forward for Scene and Kao Yang Kang. And it was even more impossible for the two of them to turn back along the narrow secret passage behind them. It can be said that there is no way forward or backward. However, when there is no way, you have to open up a way yourself. In the crisis, Scene was not panicked at all. Instead, he felt that rationality was returning more and more. He stretched out his hand to hold the lightsaber at his waist and silently said to himself in his heart, "May the force be with you." However, just when Scene was about to take action, he was stopped by Kao Yang Kang. "Wait, don't rush." Scene was extremely surprised. "Don't rush? If we are not in a hurry now, will we wait until the pursuers in the secret passage come and surround us? It's no use to be anxious now. They are so numerous and powerful, and it's impossible for a single soldier to break through." Kao Yang Kang explained, "Leave it to Liu." Almost at the same time when Scene subconsciously asked, the incredible roar of the Blackwing warriors came from the hangar. "Retreat? Captain, are you kidding? We are about to crush them to death, and you want us to retreat now? Number 3 and the others are dead. I know, but..." "Understood. Resolutely execute the order." Even from a distance, the last sentence can be heard with grief and reluctance. Then, accompanied by a burst of fine footsteps and the sound of the cables of the individual brake device running, the ambushed troops in the hangar actually began to retreat. Scene hid behind the gate, and the doubts in his heart were about to overflow. Liu. What did he do to make the Black Wing people give up the victory that was within their grasp? Okay, now we can fight to the death. Kyo Yan Kang patted Scene's arm again. The Black Wings should have almost retreated, but the dogs they tied up are still there. Before he finished speaking, the Black Wings warrior who had just roared shouted again, "Kill those 2 people, and the reward will be doubled." Roar. A group of chaotic, but extremely enthusiastic responses made Scene realize that the battle had just begun. Although it was unknown why the Black Wings suddenly retreated, but Black Wings left, but the miscellaneous troops came. When Scene and Kyo Yan Kang were engaged in a fierce battle in the hangar, the people in the banquet hall were looking down at everything from a high-level perspective. On the large screen in the center of the banquet hall, the scene in the hangar was clearly displayed. As the number 1 audience, Liu's posture seemed to be at ease. He put his legs on the dining table, leaned on the dining chair, and twisted his body back and forth, shaking the expensive, multi-gnarled blue chair, and making it creak, which seemed particularly harsh in the quiet banquet hall. What was even louder than the squeaking was Liu's unbridled mocking laughter. Ha ha ha, Mr. Zhang really understands the principle of a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. He has all the secret passages and hangars. However, I'm afraid that the most cunning, short-eared Canadian rabbit is not as thoughtful as Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang's Shenlong-class transport ship, which can escape freely to any corner of the galaxy, or even other star regions, is really wonderful. With it, no matter how big a crime you commit, you can always leave, and then let your old enemy, Mr. Chen Yao, have a headache to deal with the aftermath. It really kills 2 birds with 1 stone. While speaking, Liu did not look at Zhang Jincheng, but cast a rather teasing look at Chen Yao. The administrator of the space city was now livid and trembling with extreme anger. Zhang Jincheng's cunning rabbit has 3 burrows is not a problem. Any upper-class dignitary of Li has no shortage of escape passages in the office and at home. But this escape is limited to the range of Li. In other words, the dignitaries can run, but they cannot run out of Li. Zhang Jincheng's Shenlong-class spacecraft is equipped with an extremely thick and solid deflector shield and an advanced hyperspace engine. It can not only run out of Li, but also run out of the Kian Galaxy, and even run out of the Kian Galaxy despite the pursuit and interception of Li. This is a blatant provocation to the basic order established by Chen Yao. As the highest manager of the city, Chen Yao's attitude towards the upper dignitaries has always been gentle and even indulgent. As long as they abide by the basic rules he has established, Chen Yao can turn a blind eye to other things. Chen Yao's basic rules are not many, and the most important one is that they must not leave their posts without permission. The dignitaries can use their power for personal gain in the city, bully men and women, and even occasionally let some disobedient civilians disappear from the world. But all these privileges are based on still living in this city. Leaving Li, anyone's power and status will disappear. So Chen Yao could tolerate Zhang Jincheng being a local emperor in Xiangsuan district, and could tolerate him plotting to usurp the throne under his nose. Anyway, Chen Yao was never afraid of challenges from the lower classes. But Chen Yao could never tolerate Zhang Jincheng's 3 burrows. What made Chen Yao even more angry was that Zhang Jincheng's 3 burrows was particularly ironic. Not long ago, Zhang Jincheng submitted a renovation project report on Xiangsuan Yudong to Chen Yao, which emphasized the matters of escape secret passages and hangar renovations, and even listed the budget for purchasing airships in detail, with an honest and even submissive attitude. When Chen Yao signed and approved the report, he also lamented that, although Zhang Jincheng was bent on rebellion and wanted to take over Chen Yao's position, at least he knew how to abide by his duties as a subordinate before he took office. However, now it seems that the feeling at that time was so ironic. Zhang Jincheng's duty was simply a disguise of provocation. He had never respected Chen Yao, let alone followed Chen Yao's rules. He secretly prepared the spacecraft in the hangar, and was obviously planning to do something treasonous, as Liu said. Once the matter was exposed, he would immediately flee, leaving Chen Yao, his direct leader, to deal with the aftermath. The viciousness of human hearts made Chen Yao shudder. Chapter 189, The Ups and Downs of Life. On the other side, as the owner of Xiangsu and Yudong and the criminal of treason, Zhang Jincheng also said nothing, clenched his fists, and his face became uglier than Shen Yao. He never expected that the situation would develop to this point. Not long ago, he was ambitiously considering assassinating Nan Yujin, blaming Chen Yao, and reaching the peak of his life. But he didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, he had fallen into the abyss. The assassination plan was declared a failure before it even started. The two assassins he had high hopes for, Xin and Ziazi, died and escaped, and his assassination plan was about to be exposed in public. Zhang Jincheng knew the consequences of exposure very well. No matter how much the Qiankan group boasted of its civilized and orderly rule, its methods of treating traitors were always cold-blooded and ruthless. Even high-level group leaders like Nan Heli could not avoid sudden and bizarre deaths. Zhang Jincheng didn't dare to bet that his fate would be worse than Nan Heli's, so he had already prepared a route for escape. That Shenlong-class spaceship was his biggest reliance for being so bold. No matter how big the problem was, as long as the spaceship was still there, he could leave at any time. However, before Zhang Jincheng began to flee, his Shenlong-class spaceship had been exposed and could no longer be used. Looking at the clear and bright pictures projected on the big screen in the banquet hall, Zhang Jincheng felt fear and anger, as well as great confusion. The escape hangar located on the upper floor of the building was not top secret, but at this point in time today, when a Shenlong-class spaceship was secretly hidden in the hangar, it must be the most top secret place in Xiangsu and Yudong, nothing else. Moreover, in normal times, secret passages and hangars are the privileges of senior cadres. Even if they are not top secret, they must be confidential. Only a few people in the entire Xiangsu and district know of its existence. For the sake of confidentiality, Zhang Jincheng certainly would not allow anyone to set up any surveillance probes in the hangar and secret passages. So where did the pictures that Li Yu projected come from? When did he install the probe in this top secret hangar? And when did he take over the surveillance system in the Xiangsu and Jade building and freely retrieve the surveillance footage in the banquet hall? To what extent has the leader of this silver organization infiltrated the Xiangsu and Jade building? How many of Zhang Jincheng's most trusted confidants were undercover agents arranged by Li Yu? Exclamation mark. Mr. Zhang, there's no need to be so suspicious. The people around you are generally trustworthy. Unless there are extremely special circumstances, I will not wake up the sleeping chess piece. And if it is not awakened, the performance of the chess piece is obvious to all. Before today, would anyone think that Kao Yankang is not diligent enough? So Mr. Zhang, just enjoy the hard work of the workers around you. After all, over the past few years, you upper class have been exploiting the workers with peace of mind. After Li Yu finished speaking, he no longer paid attention to Zhang Jincheng. Instead, he watched the picture on the screen and sneered. It seems that Mr. Zhang's security work is just a face-saving job. The annual security budget of tens of millions of Qiankan coins should mostly flow back to the pockets of Mr. Zhang and several district heads. Is this the special security force you hired at a high price? In the picture, the security mercenaries, who were stimulated by the double bounty offered by Blackwing, were being defeated by Xin and Kao Yankang. Although the security mercenaries have a number advantage of more than 10 times, and the advantage of heavy weapons, and the high morale brought by the high bounty, all of this cannot make up for the disadvantage of personnel quality. Xin and Kao Yankang only used a few accurate bursts to knock down the 3 mercenaries who rushed to the front. The mercenary team of more than 20 people only suffered a mere 1/10 of the battle losses and became hesitant. The leader even looked at the direction where Blackwing went away from time to time, considering escaping along the same path. Everyone wants to get rich, but no one wants to get rich by pensions. Xin and Kao Yankang's accurate shooting skills instantly shocked them, turning a group of elite soldiers who should have fought desperately into deserters in reserve. After witnessing the performance of the security forces, Zhang Jincheng just gritted his teeth and had nothing to say. As the owner of Xiangsu and Yudong, he certainly knew how unreliable these mercenaries who were only interested in money were. Not long ago, he unexpectedly met his old friends from the Red Apricot team in his office, and all the security checkpoints along the way were swept away. However, in Li, which has been peaceful for a long time, how easy is it to find those experienced security personnel? Zhang Jincheng hired this group of rabble at great expense. If he despised their lack of skills, Zhang Jincheng would really have no one to use. Unfortunately, the security mercenaries hired by Zhang Jincheng at a high price soon fell into the brink of moral collapse. Facing the elite combination of Xin and Kao Yankang, these mercenaries couldn't even put up a decent resistance and began to flee. It seems that we can't rely on the miscellaneous soldiers. I wonder what special skills our dear No 6 has. I remember that he can only play his best with number 7. Now number 7 is sent by Captain Jiuo to recover the Zuanhuang blood. Can number 6 hold on alone? Li Yu said, turning his head and looking at Jiuo Xiaoming with a look of curiosity but actually provocation. The leader of Black Wing completely ignored Li Yu's provocation and just focused on Xin's performance on the big screen. Watching the young man knock down one security mercenary after another with skillful tactical moves, step by step approaching the escape spacecraft carefully built by Zhang Jincheng, Jiuo Xiaoming just shook his head slightly. Nothing more. Li Yu was surprised and said, nothing more. Captain Jiuo, you are really very hard-mouthed. Please make that expression again, so that I can scan it as a souvenir. Jiuo Xiaoming ignored Li Yu's provocation, but walked forward and gently touched the big screen in the banquet hall. The next moment, the picture disappeared, and the banquet hall returned to silence. Jiuo Xiaoming sighed again and said, the luring the tiger away from the mountain strategy is not very clever. You can't succeed. On the contrary, you tried to steal the Zuanhuang blood, which is really over the line. As he spoke, the picture on the big screen in the banquet hall suddenly changed from the escape hangar to the storage area on the lower floor of Xiangsu and Jade building. That scene resolutely eradicated Xiaozi's storage area. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Crossing the Line. Not long ago, Xiaozi was attacked from behind by Xin and fell here. Although the wound did not bleed due to the high temperature, his excessive struggle before death left many marks on the ground. But at this time, there was only a shiny metal floor in the picture, with no stains on it. Several fully armed soldiers in black clothes and black armor were standing guard in various places in the storage area with serious expressions. Blasters of different models were ready to be fired at any time, and the situation was solemn. Seeing this, Li Yu whistled softly. Beautiful. Black Wing is so quick. In such a short time, all members have assembled, recovered the resources, and cleaned up the scene. I thought that my useless subordinates would definitely be able to intercept the goods this time, but you guys got there first. What a pity. As he spoke, Li Yu took out a communicator with a particularly exaggerated appearance and said loudly, crossing Shikiwen, you can roll back. Captain Jiuo's people are in place in advance, and you will not get away with it. An unclear voice came from the communicator. Don't worry, Bosley, let us try harder. It's just Black Wing. Our brothers are definitely not scared. Kill this group of rabble and get back Xiaozi's body and our debt will be written off, right? Li Yu nodded. Ah, that's right. If we can pick up that precious Zuanhuang blood sample, your debt will be written off. But if you die there, I will have to ask your families for the pensions of your subordinates. Jiuo Xiaoming stared at Li Yu and reiterated. Li Yu, you have crossed the line. I know, so what? Li Yu turned off the communicator and said with a smile, do you have the guts to kill me? Captain Jiuo, times have changed. Don't use that line to threaten people anymore. After all, even people who haven't crossed the line may suddenly die. So for the living, what does it matter whether they cross the line or not? The next moment, Li Yu's smile suddenly withered, replaced by a solemn look. There is really no need for Kyankan group to attack Nanheli. Killing innocent people will not establish the authority of the group, but will only make people alienated. When Li Yu spoke, he did not care that the two parties of the Nan family were right beside him, as if he was just describing a trivial matter. However, the weight of this topic has already changed the faces of the two parties at the same time. Guo Xiaoming ignored the heavy news thrown by Liu, but repeated his previous words. Liu, you crossed the line by plotting against the Zhuanhuang blood. Liu smiled. I crossed the line. You let a test subject of the Zhuanhuang blood out to bite people randomly, and you still have the nerve to accuse me of crossing the line. Zizi might die somewhere at any time, and his body would be picked up by someone at will. It's not too wasteful for us to have it in our hands. Liu, you crossed the line by plotting against the Zhuanhuang blood. Hearing Guo Xiaoming repeat this sentence again and again, Liu finally restrained his smile and nodded. Yes, I crossed the line. So what? You dare not go against the orders of your employer and start a full-scale war against us. What's the point of repeatedly making empty and harsh remarks? Or are you too embarrassed to save face and waiting for me to apologize so that you can step down? Okay, I'm sorry, dear. I'll give you this candy as an apology. After you accept it, go back and forgive us, okay? Guo Xiaoming ignored the Zun specialty candies thrown to him by Liu, but stared at the picture on the big screen and said, you are not really planning to recover the Zhuanhuang blood on Zizi. You just want to take this opportunity to mobilize all the Blackwing people over there to give Xin a chance to escape. Liu sneered. Captain Guo, you are joking. That kid deserted in public and escaped my $1 million debt. He is so shameless. We Silver are determined to despise such people. How could we sacrifice precious manpower for such a despicable villain? By the way, if Captain Guo catches him before torturing him, please help us collect the debt. I can give you 20 points in return. Guo Xiaoming still maintained a tense expression, as if he didn't hear Liu's chizzing. Your idea is good. Zizi's corpse is very important to us. So even if we know your plan, we can only mobilize all our main forces to ensure that there is no problem with the sample. However, you overestimated the ability of that young man. As he said this, Guo Xiaoming stretched out his hand again and changed the picture on the big screen back to the hangar. At this time, Xin and Kao Yankang almost secured the victory. Although there were only 2 of them, they easily defeated the enemy that was 10 times their number with their superior tactical qualities. In the picture, Xin used the sharp perception of the Jedi apprentice and the various shelters in the hangar to easily dodge the messy shooting of the mercenaries. At the same time, he held the blaster and knocked down the opponents one by one. During this period, he did not kill them, but the actual combat effect was better than killing them. The mercenaries who were shot by the energy beam lay on the ground and kept groaning and wailing, further disintegrating the fighting will of their teammates and making the mercenaries who should have played a numerical advantage completely become a mob. The situation developed in a direction that was favorable to Xin in the chaos. Seeing this, Liu couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This kid has improved quite fast. When he was in DUI 9527, he wasn't so accurate. This must be because he got the true teachings from Lunan. I think I should ask him for tuition. After a pause, Liu turned his head and asked Guo Xiaoming in an extremely inelegant posture. Captain Guo, what you said is just so-so, and you overestimated his ability. Is that it? If you don't show some real skills, he will really run away. Guo Xiaoming still maintained that rigid expression, his eyes locked on Xin. It was not until Xin killed his way to the escape spaceship that Zhang Jinqing had carefully prepared for him that Guo Xiaoming finally nodded slightly. The next moment, Xin suddenly looked down at his bracelet and then flew backwards in a posture that went against common sense. The speed was so fast that it almost left an after image on the big screen. At the same time, the Shenlui class spacecraft that Zhang Jinqing had high hopes for exploded with a loud bang. Fierce flames filled the entire screen. A strong shock wave followed, shaking the probe placed in the hangar, and then the picture stopped abruptly. Liu stopped shaking and asked in surprise, "Are you trying to blow Xin up? Is it so cruel? Was the bomb secretly installed by number 6 during the chaos? When did he have this ability? He should be a useless waste without number 7. After a pause, Liu turned his gaze to his assistant. From the beginning, the person sent by Captain Guo was not number 6, and he was lying to me. The silver-white robot, which had been silent all the time, made a clear and beautiful voice. From the feedback from Crossing Shikiwen, the real number 6 has never left number 7, and the one who was sent to intercept scene at the top should be number 0. Liu suddenly realized, oh, the number 0 who has never existed in the official documents, but is everywhere like a shadow? There are hundreds of appearances in the rumors. He can be a man or a woman, a jeweler or an Akona, but in fact the original body is a middle-aged human male with a height of 1.7 meters. Chapter 191, My Job. Liu was interrupted by Jiuo Xiaoming's cold snort when he was only halfway through his speech. Obviously, Jiuo Xiaoming could only stop Liu's deliberate disclosure of the top secrets of Blackwing by violence, even if it was against the will of his employer. However, Liu stopped talking at the right time, as if he was deliberately provoking the other party's nerves. Then, under Jiuo Xiaoming's fiery eyes, he shifted the topic to Chen Yao. Boss Chen, if I were you, I should now consider how to avoid being silenced. After all, Captain Jiuo's employer is Boss Nan, not you. It is not convenient for him to silence Boss Nan, but it is still easy for him to silence you. Chen Yao shuddered when he heard this, and his resentment towards Zhang Jincheng disappeared in an instant, leaving only fear in his mind. As a senior cadre of Kyankan Group, he knew very well that what Liu said was true. In Kyankan Group, the most taboo thing is to know too much, especially about the secrets of armed groups such as Blackwing and Kyankan Security. If you get involved too deeply, you will be killed immediately. Chen Yao subconsciously wanted to ask Nan Yujin for help, but the gentle middle-aged man didn't even look at him. Liu said, don't even think about asking Nan Yujin for help. In his eyes, people like you who only want to retire are not worth deliberately trying to win over. If you die, they will just support a more obedient person to replace you. The one who can save you now is the eldest lady behind me. For someone who needs to take over a huge political legacy in a hurry, people like you with rich resumes and fatal weaknesses are the easiest to handle and the most suitable to be recruited as loyal lackeys. Chen Yao quickly looked at Nan Wuiyao for help, but Nan Wuiyao was also very surprised at this time. She didn't expect Liu to act on his own. Before the employer even spoke, he acted as a broker. Moreover, Sin's life and death were unknown, so how could he still have the leisure to be a political broker here? Question mark? Liu seemed to see Nan Wuiyao's surprise and said with a smile, Miss, don't worry about that guy. He is very tough. Even Xiaozi couldn't deal with him. For a mere Blackwing, at least Captain Jiuo has to take action personally to have a chance. 0, who hides in the shadows all day, can only do fireworks special effects, and can't hurt anyone. However, considering that Captain Jiuo even sent such a trusted subordinate, I can express on behalf of Sin that I'm flattered. Before Liu finished speaking, Jiuo Xiaoming raised his hand and drew his gun without any warning. The silver blaster on his waist reflected the light and drew a lightning-like afterimage. However, Liu's movements were as fast as his. In the banquet hall, people only felt a flash before their eyes and saw that Liu and Jiuo Xiaoming had already pointed their blasters at each other's foreheads. The two did not waver in the slightest because of the muzzles of the guns above their heads. Liu still had a playful smile on his face, and Jiuo Xiaoming also maintained his usual expressionless face. However, as the two men moved, the atmosphere in the banquet hall was already on the verge of breaking out. The Blackwing warriors following behind Jiuo Xiaoming raised their guns one after another, and Liu's assistant Bei also silently revealed his own weapon, a remote control of a bomb flashing a dangerous red light. To avoid misunderstanding, I would like to make a special statement. The bomb is far away from here, probably in the storage area on the bottom floor, and the power is not great. It will not threaten the people here, and will only blow those who are recovering top secret information to pieces along with the information. Don't worry, although Crossing Shikiwen, that rubbish, is incompetent in surprise attacks, he is absolutely professional in blasting. He will definitely blow anyone to death if he says he will, and he will never accidentally miss like that 1.7 meter tall middle-aged man. After Liu's explanation, Jiuo Xiaoming was silent for a while, then he retracted his gun and stretched out his hand to signal his men to put down their weapons. Jiuo Xiaoming has absolute authority in Blackwing. Although he was teased and suppressed by Liu many times, and his prestige was temporarily lost, his men put down their weapons without any hesitation. "If you win this time, I will withdraw all my forces," Liu said. "Bay, turn off the flash." Upon hearing this, the robot assistant took back the remote control with a flashing red light, and returned to its quiet and elegant posture. However, the deadly red light seemed to still remain in people's retinas. The two Blackwing warriors following Jiuo Xiaoming, when they heard the captain admit defeat, were full of reluctance, but also felt a sense of relief. Finally, they didn't have to confront this monster-like silver leader. Jiuo Xiaoming silently swallowed the result of the temporary defeat, put away his weapons under Liu's playful eyes, and then used the communicator to give clear instructions to each of his men. Finally, he came to Nan Yujin and said in a deep voice, "Boss Nan Yujin, it's a pity that your security contract with Blackwing can only end here." Nan Yujin sighed. "I understand that compared to protecting a certain member of the board of directors, protecting the top secret matters related to the overall interests of the group will always be at the top of your priority list. Thank you for your understanding." Jiuo Xiaoming bowed slightly and quickly evacuated the banquet hall with his men. The warriors in black armor left, but the atmosphere in the banquet hall did not ease at all. In fact, because the people who could suppress Liu left, the figure of the silver leader became twisted and hideous. The young man, who was not tall, was like a 20-meter-long ocean killer, who was so oppressive that he couldn't breathe. In this regard, Liu was also very considerate. He shrugged and finally turned his head to look at his employer. "Miss, I'm sorry for acting on my own and stealing your limelight just now." Nan Wuiyao had the opportunity to speak for the first time. She raised her eyebrows and said in a voice that suppressed her anger, "I never wanted to be in the limelight." "Then start thinking about it carefully from now on." Liu smiled. "As the heir to a dignified family, there is no reason for you to hide behind the scenes." As he said that, Liu raised his head to Nan Yujin again. "Mr. Yujin, what do you think?" Nan Yujin asked back. "Mr. Liu, as a mercenary, don't you think you have stretched your hands too far?" Liu retorted, "I was employed by Miss Nan Wuiyao. The content of the contract is to guarantee the safety of her life and property within the time limit and to maintain her dignity as the heir to the Nan family. Everything I did was to execute the contract, and there was no overstepping. After all, we are a small business, and there is no reason to offer preferential services at every turn." This time even the employer Nan Wuiyao couldn't listen anymore. "You were also executing the contract just now," Liu said confidently. "Of course it is to execute the contract. Otherwise, miss, it can't be that I'm greedy for your money and beauty and deliberately show bravery to seduce you. Miss, you should have some self-awareness." Bei interrupted. "If you continue, you will be insulting the dignity of your employer." Liu immediately changed the subject. "How dare a lowly savage like me have any evil thoughts about such a noble and beautiful lady like you? Of course, I'm considering you wholeheartedly. I just performed tirelessly to help you eliminate safety hazards." "Safety hazards? Do you mean Blackwing?" Liu sneered. "Why did you make such an incredible sound, miss? If you didn't trust Blackwing, why would you leave the official thugs alone and hire us? My price is not cheap, so it is my job to help you clear away the eyesores." Chapter 192 Injury. Nan Wuiyao was speechless at Liu's defense. She had remained silent the whole time before, purely because Liu acted too quickly, and she was caught off guard. But after hearing what Liu said, Nan Wuiyao couldn't help but regret it. She should have stood up to stop him at the first time. Nan Yujin said in a deep voice, "Liu, don't you think this kind of sophistry is empty and powerless? Are you doing this for your employer or to save the newcomer under your command? Do you think we are all blind and can't see it?" Liu asked back, "Is there a conflict between saving Xin and safeguarding the interests of the employer? Xin is the lifesaver of the eldest lady. If the eldest lady had known that Blackwing was chasing Xin, she would have immediately ordered us to help. After all, the Nan family has always been grateful for what they have done." Nan Wuiyao was stunned by what Liu said. She felt that the other party's logic was very problematic, but she didn't know how to refute it for a while. After Li Yu finished speaking, he did not respond to Nan Wuai and Nan Yujin's questions, but waved his hand at them. Okay, the troublemakers have been cleared out, and I will not disturb the conversation between you and your niece. After all these things, you must have a lot to say, so please enjoy your private time. When Li Yu and his assistant left the banquet hall by the collars of Zhang Jincheng, Chen Yao and others, the atmosphere between Nan Wuai and Nan Yujin became awkward. The two did not talk, nor did they even look at each other, letting time slip away in silence. It was not until the upper echelons of Xiangsa New Dong were slightly shaken again, that Nan Yujin sighed and said, Wuai, your performance this time was really very good, far beyond my expectations. Hiring Bai to counter, Blackwing, your judgment and courage are already very much like that of an elder brother. Nan Wuai shook his lips and said, I know you don't trust me. Nan Yujin said, there's nothing to be embarrassed about admitting, although I have been trying to show my sincerity and kindness from beginning to end. But if you open your heart to me, because of these superficial efforts, then I will be disappointed in you. The successor trained by my elder brother should not be so naive and ignorant. Nan Yujin said to this point, and Nan Wuai couldn't help but sighed. Second uncle, I really can't trust you completely. After all, my father's death was too bizarre, and among the brothers, only you happened to avoid the disaster, and came back, when I needed help the most. But I have never doubted you, because unfounded suspicion is meaningless. It's a very rational thought. It's good that you have such a mentality. You don't have to trust me, and you don't even have to be submissive. Because there are many people in the current board of directors who don't want to see our relationship too good, and don't want to see the Nan family revived too quickly. Second uncle, Nan Yujin smiled. Don't worry, I won't mind, so let's not waste time saying these empty words. We have come all the way from Zun, and we still have business to do. The two people outside the door, I will choose Zhang Jincheng, and you choose Chen Yao. Let's take Li down first. When the eldest brother was in power, this city was almost the back garden of the Nan family. There is no reason to lose it in our hands. Xiangsa New Dong, 125th floor secret hangar. The violent explosion of the Shenloi type spacecraft almost completely destroyed the overall structure of the hangar. The violent shockwave lifted the heavy floor, exposing the delicate and dense mechanical mechanism inside. The rising flames blackened the exquisite ceiling and burned the air in the hangar to distort the light. The nearest round industrial robots were smashed to pieces on the spot, and the broken parts splattered everywhere, becoming indestructible weapons, and the injured mercenary screamed in pain. In the heat wave, Sin endured the severe pain that almost destroyed his sanity, and slowly stood up. However, before he could stabilize his body, he felt his right leg weakened and fell to the ground again with a thud. In his distorted eyes, he could vaguely see that his right leg was broken. At the last moment of the spacecraft explosion, Sin received a warning from his wristband and avoided the fatal disaster in time, but the strong impact still blew him away and hit a tall metal pillar in the hangar. Even the flesh and blood body that had been tempered for thousands of times could not withstand the cold metal. Sin's right leg was broken in the collision, and the strong impact even hurt his internal organs. The Jedi apprentice had to use all his strength to support himself to stay conscious and not faint on the spot. However, for a moment, he only felt confused all around. He was a little overwhelmed by the heat wave. Don't stand there, move. In the chaos, a slightly embarrassed voice pierced Sin's mind, which shocked him. The next moment, a bloated middle-aged man crouched down and trotted over with difficulty. A fat and tender hand that was obviously neglected from work tightly grasped Sin's collar and lifted him away, as if he was picking up goods. After just 2 steps, Kaio Yankang let go of his sore and weak hand with difficulty, kicked Sin behind a thick metal pillar, and then sat down beside Sin, leaning his back against the pillar, panting rapidly. Damn, it's really, I haven't exercised for too long. Kaio Yankang complained breathlessly. I'm having a heart attack after just a few steps. Sin said, thank you, ahem. As soon as he said the word thank you, Sin couldn't help but cough, and every time he took a strong breath, a disgusting smell of rust surged in his throat. Talk less and adjust your state as soon as possible. If you want to live, you still have a lot to fight for. Although Kyo Kang looked embarrassed with his panting, as he gradually adjusted his breathing, the temperament of a veteran who had experienced hundreds of battles returned to him again. I'll give you 2 minutes to rest, and then I'll take you on a flying boat to the port, to meet up with Bosley, the former deputy minister of the Ministry of Health, who always liked to talk endlessly, spoke very simply and clearly in the battle, and there was no doubt about it. While Scene was trying to hold back his dizziness and thinking about how to cooperate with the other party, he saw Kyo Kang suddenly pick up his blaster, turn around and aim at a nearby place, and violently shoot, knocking down 2 security mercenaries who were trying to fish in troubled waters. However, after all, due to lack of training, Kyo Kang's shooting movements were a little too large, exposing a considerable part of his bloated body outside the bunker, and the counterattack from the security mercenaries just happened to graze his side. The air was immediately filled with the stench of burnt flesh, and Kyo Kang cursed and raised his body in pain. Chapter 193 For what? Kyo Kang was obviously seriously injured, but before Scene could get close to him, he reached out and pushed Scene away, saying, "Don't worry about me. The fat layer is very thick, it won't be a problem. Now you have 3 minutes to rest." Scene nodded, took the time to calm his disordered breathing, and suppressed the pain and dizziness with strong willpower. In the crisis, the Jedi apprentice felt that his connection with the Force seemed to be closer. The ubiquitous life energy moisturized his body like a spring, allowing him to slowly recover from his serious injuries. Although it was impossible to substantially heal his body, Scene had gradually adjusted his body to a state where he could fight to the death. 3 minutes passed quickly, and Kyo Kang reached out and patted Scene on the shoulder, indicating that he could move. The target was a Kingfeng type flying boat not far from the two of them. The unique eye-shaped structure made it particularly conspicuous in this hangar. The Kingfeng type flying boat could not travel in space, but it had unparalleled mobility and defense on the surface of the planet, which was the best choice for escape. At this time, Scene and Kyo Kang were only a dozen meters away from the Kingfeng spaceship. However, just as Scene had already stood up on one foot and was ready to sprint, a burst of dense footsteps suddenly came from the entrance of the hangar. A group of fully armed security mercenaries hurried over. Damn, they came so fast, I misjudged the time. Kyo Kang cursed inwardly and fired with his gun. The dense blast of beams forced the invading security mercenaries to retreat behind the gate, and the mercenaries chasing from the secret passage did not have a plan to attack the enemy head on. They hid behind the bunker and shouted, "Kyo Kang, your wife and children are in our hands. If you don't want the scene to be too ugly, surrender quickly." Kyo Kang cursed, "I have been working diligently for the public for so many years. Where can I find my wife and children?" This righteous rebuttal made the mercenaries on the opposite side stunned and speechless for a while. Kyo Kang took advantage of the situation and put his arm around Scene's shoulders, rushing forward with a strength and speed that was totally unbefitting of this bloated body. At this moment, the mercenary behind the door came to his senses. Damn, his wife works at Shiangsa New Dang, and his son goes to school nearby, so how come he has no wife and children? Besides, this guy has been stuck in the position of deputy minister for almost 10 years because of his slippery behavior. How can he be conscientious and dedicated to the public? You suddenly felt guilty just because the other party was loud. It's really shameful. The mercenaries scolded angrily while trying to save face, turning around from behind the gate, holding their guns ready to shoot. The next moment, right under their feet, a bomb hidden on the surface of the gate exploded, and the fierce flames instantly engulfed several mercenaries who were closest to it. Scene, who was charging on one leg, couldn't help but jump his eyelids. Although Kyo Kang, the veteran, had declined to the point where he couldn't bear to look directly at him, his combat awareness was comparable to those veterans of the Red Star Squad. While rushing into the hangar out of breath, he did not forget to set a trap at the entrance and then ruthlessly ambush the later comers. This unexpected ambush completely disrupted the rhythm of the mercenaries. Dozens of fully armed mercenaries who chased from the secret passage fell to the ground at the first moment, and no one dared to get up until the leader stood up angrily and urged his men to charge at the threat of the trap with the muzzle of the gun. If you don't charge now, you will be held accountable by the people of Blackwing when you go back. I can't protect you. Half of it was the muzzle of the leader's gun, and half of it was the illustrious reputation of Blackwing, urging the mercenaries to overcome their fear and stand up again. However, it was too late. The distance of more than 10 meters was not far. Kaio Yankang had already taken the opportunity to rush to the side of the flying boat with Scene, and then stretched out his hand and opened the cockpit of the flying boat, dragging and kicking Scene into it. When the mercenaries rushed into the hangar on the floor that was burned to high temperature by the bomb, Kaio Yankang had already started the engine of the flying boat. Then, dense blaster beams hit the eye-shaped Kingfeng flying boat, making a series of harsh sounds. However, the security mercenaries did not have heavy firepower, and the blasters in their hands alone could not shake the high-strength armor of the flying boat. So they could only watch the spacecraft start its engine and the blooming of ripples, soar into the air, and disappear into the night like lightning. However, after flying away from the Shiangsu and Jade building, the Kingfeng flying boat did not immediately fly away, but turned to the bottom of the top disc of the Jade building at a subtle angle, hiding the eye-shaped body in the shadow. Kaio Yankang, who was driving the flying boat, did not explain why, and Scene did not need to explain. A simple misleading trick can effectively divert the enemy's attention. Scene did not think that the enemy only existed inside the Shiangsu and Jade building. Since Blackwing could predict that they would go to the hangar, they would naturally be on guard against the actions of the two after they snatched the flying boat. It only takes one missile and one accurate burst of heavy laser cannons for Scene and Kaio Yankang to immediately turn into fireworks in the sky, so at least they have to wait until the storm is over and see the right opportunity before walking away. Taking advantage of the brief calm, Kaio Yankang took out a candy bar from his jacket pocket while panting and chewed it. From his embarrassing state of sweating and increasingly unstable breathing, it is not difficult to judge that the intense exercise just now has caused the middle-aged man to fall into the embarrassing state of hypoglycemia. He is really no longer a soldier, and this made Scene couldn't help but have a question. Why do you want to be an undercover for EU? It can be seen that Kaio Yankang has been seriously playing the role of the Deputy Minister of Health for a long time before, or in other words, it is far from being described by the word acting. He was indeed the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Health at that time, a middle-aged employee who had not been promoted for 10 years, but was content with his position. Such a person has his own career and his own family. Why would he give up everything for EU and do a business that he has long been unfamiliar with? To put it bluntly, what good can there be in working for EU? Can it be compared with being a middle-level cadre in Shiangsu and Yudong? Maybe it is not so glorious, maybe not so prominent, but it is better in being at ease, peaceful and comfortable. Even some of the upper-class dignitaries of the Kyankan group often say on TV shows that they envy the leisurely life of the middle class more than those worth billions. Although the authenticity of these words is questionable, it is true that for most people, a stable and comfortable life is far better than temporary prominence. So, what is Kaio Yankang doing for? In response to Scene's question, Kaio Yankang just smiled faintly and asked in an unclear voice, "Why do you want to be a GD?" Chapter 194 Use Your Brain. Kaio Yankang's question made Scene startled. He was not surprised that his identity was revealed. After all, the lightsaber had been used, and one could not expect all Ganran under the information blockade to be blind and unable to recognize this iconic weapon of the GD. What surprised him was why Kaio Yankang asked such a question. Why be a GD? Does this also need a reason? No, in fact, it should be necessary. Anyone who does anything or plays any role will need a reason. But what about your own reason for being a GD? The reason should be very clear, but for a moment, Scene only felt a wave of fatigue and dizziness. The severe pain in his right leg also began to erode his sanity again. Although it was clear that the crisis had not yet been resolved, or in other words, it was the calm before the most dangerous storm at this time, Scene still couldn't control it, and allowed his consciousness to sink into darkness little by little. And at the last moment, he seemed to hear Kaio Yankang's shocked and angry voice. "Damn, dragon hunters? Why are they here? At the same time, inside Shiangsa Jade Hall, Li Yu also summoned all his friends and began an intense conspiracy. In other words, publish all his previous conspiracies so that his subordinates can get a glimpse of the overall situation. Boss Li, you are playing a little too hard this time. A strong man with a shiny head and a broad body squatted next to Li Yu, grunting and complaining, while checking the weapons and equipment in his hands. However, before he finished speaking, his shiny bald head was unceremoniously hit by a tall and thin man with a metal wrench. Lu Jiuwen, stop talking nonsense. The boss has offered such a high remuneration this time, just to let us play as big as possible. If we want to be safe and risk-free, then you can go back to the base and move bricks. It will take 100 years to pay back. The debt is cleared. Lu Jiuwen touched his head, shrank his neck, and whispered, that doesn't mean I'm going to provoke. Blackwing. I'm going to die, and it doesn't matter if I leave it to Boss Li at any time, but if something happens, what if we piss off the board of directors, attract an army to crush us, and crush our entire Silver Knights? This frank and unrefined straight man's words immediately angered his teammates, and a female soldier who was almost equally strong used explosive energy. The butt of the gun hit Lu Jiuwen on the head. Shut up if you don't know how to speak. Lu Jiuwen touched the back of his head, which had been tempered for a long time, and muttered, I'm also thinking about everyone. Li Yu pointed out his hand unceremoniously. Sister Zheng, brother 2, keep beating until this idiot has a long memory. If you are not smart, don't think too much. Lu Jiuwen was suddenly hit with stars in his eyes by the wrench and the butt of the gun, and he was speechless. Li Yu said, although Lu Jiuwen is a fool, one thing is right. We Bei'an cannot afford to offend the board of directors. Once the army comes, all of us will die. So we must not offend the board of directors. What he said immediately made his subordinates confused. Boss Li, you should speak frankly. None of us are much smarter than Lu Jiuwen. We can't understand your roundabout ways. The sturdy Sister Zheng said calmly. Li Yu shook his head. I'm making such a roundabout way, just to let you use your brains. Don't give up thinking every time you go on a mission with me, and just wait for my orders to do things. Now in our Silver Knights, I walk to wherever I go, the average IQ will drop a lot, and in the long run, my reputation will also be affected. Sister Zheng, Lu Jiuwen and others seemed to understand, so they could only deal with it in a perfunctory manner. Li Yu didn't bother to argue with these subordinates who were so smart, and continued, everything I'm doing now is to avoid annoying the board of directors. Don't think that the board of directors will retaliate just because I provoke. Blackwing. Bei'an used to he has done much more outrageous things than this, and he has never seen any large army approaching. These words made Sister Zheng and others even more confused. They were all veterans of the Bei'an organization who had been living in the abandoned area for decades. His resume is even deeper than that of the current leader Li Yu, but no one remembers that Bei'an has done anything extraordinary. In other words, before Li Yu took over the power, Bei'an was a non-governmental organization that developed in a low-key manner and struggled to survive. It never did anything eye-catching. The previous leader was even more gentle and elegant, not like someone from a deserted area at all. Li Yu sneered, it's normal that you don't know. If you all knew, Bei'an would be doomed. But in any case, remember this, Kyankan Group is an interest group, and the board of directors is a complex decision-making body. They can't make decisions for the sake of emotion. Everything is for profit. As long as they feel that it is not worthwhile, even if we go to the top of the sky and blow up the disk, they will only tolerate it. Lu Jiuwen blinked. Really? It's okay to blow up the dome? Li Yu also imitated him and blinked. Have I arranged to blow up the dome in these years? No. Then do you think it's okay to blow up the dome? Question mark? If nothing happens, I'll send you and Crossing Kiwan to be suicide bombers, okay? Li Yu asked angrily, then took the tall and thin to Emo's wrench and hit Lu Jiuwen. I just told you. You have to use your brain to speak, and you won't be able to remember it. At this time, a silver warrior who had been standing behind Li Yu without saying a word asked softly, Boss Li, are you trying to bind yourself to Namwu? Why are you trying to be so radical? Li Yu said, your brain is still good for 170,000 yuan. I worked tirelessly on this trip. In addition to saving the brat who was evading debt, I just wanted to do it. The best way is to sell it to the eldest lady. Lu Jiuwen couldn't help but scratch his head and asked, "Bossly, is the best way to sell it to Nan Wuai and to provoke a relationship between her and Nan Yujin?" Another wrench came down. "You're right. You have to knock even if you're right. Because although the thing is right, the way of expressing it is wrong." Li Yu explained, "Everything I do is based on show the value of silver. Try to think about it from Nan Wuai's perspective. What does a little girl who suddenly loses her father, loses her confidant, and is left alone need most?" Lu Jiuwen blinked and tried to use it. He replied with a flattering face that he had never used before. "A husband as handsome and unrestrained as Mr. Li." Li Yu's expression changed, and he pointed at Lu Jiuwen. "Beat me to death." Sister Zheng was well prepared. He too immediately took action, and a flurry of punches and kicks left Lu Jiuwen completely unable to speak. After that, Li Yuk glanced at his loyal assistant Bei and said softly, "You should know that I have no interest in Nan Wuai." Bei responded coldly, "Based on your behavior record, I have reason to believe that you are interested in Nan Wuai. All women are not interested." Li Yu was silent for a while and said, "You can understand it this way. Anyway, back to the topic. The biggest problem for Nan Wuai is that her sense of existence is too weak. A young girl, a successor who has not yet had time to be supported by Nan Heli and come into the public eye, can easily disappear without a trace in the turmoil. For Nan Wuai, nothing has made her famous. More importantly, she is a lonely and weak woman, facing a group of insidious politicians who are like wolves and tigers. She has no one and anything that she can trust. Even though her second uncle has been diligently bringing her around during this period. In fact, Nan Yujin is. The better she behaves, the more suspicious she becomes." "Well, boss, why does Nan Yujin look suspicious when he performs well?" Sister Zheng was puzzled. Li Yu said, "Because he has no reason to behave so well. A great opportunity to conspire to usurp the throne is right in front of him. Instead of cherishing it, he will give up his power and wealth to a weak woman less than 20 years old. If it were you, do you believe it?" Sister Zheng hesitated for a while, not knowing how to answer. "There is such a good thing, why don't you believe it?" Chapter 195 No Choice. Li Yu said, "Oh, fortunately Miss Nan Wuai is not you, but she has nothing to hesitate about. From the beginning, she has never trusted any good thing, let alone anyone. Well, it can be said that Mr. Nanheli's death was not in vain. At least it has made his naive daughter a little alert. After all, even the omnipotent father died unclearly. It would be too naive to trust anyone at this time." Li Yu's tone was frivolous and full of sarcasm, as if the leaders and heirs of the four major families were just yellow-mouthed children in his eyes. But the listeners felt creepy, and felt that the world of adults was extremely gloomy and dark, which made people stay away. Li Yu looked at the unbearable faces of his subordinates and was helpless. He directly announced the answer. "Miss Nan Wuai has no relatives and is isolated. At this time, there is only one thing, or one word, that she can trust: reputation. Only the word reputation can protect her. Only by letting the world know that Nan Heli has a daughter who is a legitimate heir, she will not die unclearly. Only by letting the old men on the board of directors know that she dares to openly defy the order of the group, can she get the old men's eyes. And this kind of straight look is more useful than any private care. Because the word politics is never about interests, but about people's hearts." When Li Yu said this, he also knew that his subordinates could not understand, so he shook his head and concluded concisely, "For Nan Wuai, there is nothing more suitable than the Silver Knights to make her famous. Because in the entire Kyan galaxy, only I have the courage to confront Blackwing head on, and I have the ability to kill Jiuo Xiaoming and help her become famous overnight." The last words drew an unconscious applause from his subordinates. Although they did not understand the intricate interests involved, they knew that the boss was awesome and mighty. For his subordinates, this was enough. Only the robot assistant Bei, who always maintained a calm tone, commented in a cold tone as always, "Does Nan Wuai personally agree with what you said?" This sentence immediately hit the nail on the head. No matter how sophisticated Li Yu's analysis of interests was, it was ultimately his own wishful thinking. In fact, Nan Wuai never invited Li Yu to do these things. The reason why she hired the Silver Knights instead of Blackwing was just that she had a strong aversion and distrust of Blackwing, and she really had no one to use. So this certainly does not mean that Nan Wuya authorized Liu to confront Blackwing head on in Chiangsa New Dang. In fact, although Nan Wuya was smart, he was also cautious. He was far from being so bold as to dare to slap the board of directors in the face when he was still young. Liu was acting on her own initiative, and it was obviously against Nan Wuya's will. But Liu didn't care. If she really inherited Nanhela's wisdom, she should know that my choice at this time is the best solution. She should unconditionally support the Silver Knights, tie her interests to ours, and then inherit the orthodoxy as soon as possible, and we will all rise together. And if she is not smart enough and backs down at this time, then I have nothing to say. Although the Silver Knights have been tied to the Nan family in the past few years, it does not mean that we have no other way out. Sister Zheng couldn't help but frown when she heard this. As a senior warrior of the Silver Organization, she has lived in the Knights for much longer than Liu. In her impression, Silver has always been a vassal of the Nan family, or at least an inseparable partner. Leaving the Nan family, let alone other things, how should the foundation of the wasteland be dealt with? Liu smiled and said, if we are not bound to the Nan family, we can disband on the spot and pursue our own future. Anyway, you are all masters with unique skills, and you will not have to worry about food anywhere. As for those ordinary people living in the wasteland, even the orthodox rulers like Kyankan group don't care anyway, so why should we, the savages, care so much? After saying this, Liu restrained his smile and said in a deep voice, so we had no choice from the beginning. Nan Yujin can't trust us, and the other people in the Nan family are not trustworthy at all. Our only choice is Nan Wuya. For this, even if she has no choice, it doesn't matter if she even holds a grudge. Not to mention sweeping the face of Blackwing once. Even if we perish together with them, we will do it. This time, every Silver member around him nodded seriously. Boss Liu usually likes to say something that everyone can't understand, but occasionally, he will use some simple words. At this time, Liu is not guiding thinking, let alone explaining, but issuing the most direct order. If you understand, you must obey, and if you don't understand, you must obey. Now Liu wants everyone to be tied to Nan Wuya, so from now on Nan Wuya will be everyone's eldest daughter. At this time, Crossing Shikuan asked again, what about Scene? When Scene was mentioned, Liu immediately lost his temper and cursed, what kind of stinky boy? When someone puts out a hook, he can't wait to bite it. He has no brains at all. I thought he was a promising talent who is cautious and meticulous enough, but he behaves like a passionate teenager of 16 or 17 years old. Crossing Shikuan couldn't help but say, he is indeed a teenager of 16 or 17 years old. So no matter how much you curse, you still have to save him. Liu gritted his teeth and said, for him, I took out the most precious chess piece. After this step, our management of Li basically has to start all over again. Unlike his confident statement in front of Zhang Jincheng, Chen Yao and others, Liu still told the truth in front of his own people. There is only one holographic chess piece as useful as Kao Yang Kang in the entire space city, or even in the entire Kyan galaxy. Crossing Shikuan nodded upon hearing this, but did not ask whether it was worthwhile to use this chess piece. Since Liu had decided so, it must be worthwhile. The only thing that made this senior Deta warrior curious was whether the chess piece that Boss Li had high hopes for was really that useful. Could he lead Scene out of this trap? You know, although Blackwing withdrew, they only withdrew the visible personnel. Their control over the Chiangsa and Jade building, and even the entire space city is still there. As long as Jiuo Xiaoming gave an order, or even a thought, thousands of people would act according to his will. Not to mention leaving Scene behind. Even if he wanted to leave all the Silver Knights in the Chiangsa and Jade building, that should be impossible. At most half of them could be left behind. At this moment, a burst of tiny footsteps came from not far away. Chapter 196 Don't be a conspirator. The soldiers around Liu immediately turned their eyes away warily, and then they were all stunned. A slender woman trotted over. She was wearing a simple grassroots clerk uniform, but the blue-gray top was stained with blood and dust. Her fluffy gray hair was also stuck to her cheeks, which made her look hideous. She had a blaster that was obviously captured on her chest. Her posture was standard and steady, and people could tell at a glance that she was an absolutely well-trained elite soldier. All of this was incompatible with her clerk's dress, and the nameplate printed with Kyle O'Kaley on her chest was extremely eye-catching. Of course, compared to this woman named Kyle O'Kaley, the real surprise was the young man following behind her. The young man looked only 14 or 15 years old, with light freckles on his face. The short dark grey hair and vaguely similar facial features showed that he was absolutely related to Kyle O'Kaley in front. The school uniform he was wearing indicated his identity. Finally, he also had a captured blaster on his chest, and his school uniform was stained with blood, just like his mother. This seemingly delicate and weak, but in fact fierce mother and son, attracted everyone's attention as soon as they appeared. Even the most vigilant crossing Shikuan just watched Kyle O'Kaley run all the way to Bosley, and then raised his hand to slap him. Liu did not dodge or evade, and was hit hard. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth on the spot, and his cynical expression also looked a little embarrassed. At this time, the silver warriors beside Liu woke up from their dreams, and quickly took out their weapons, and aimed at Kyle O'Kaley. Kyle O'Kaley's son was particularly fierce, not afraid of the large number of people and guns on the opposite side, and just raised his blaster, and pointed the muzzle directly at Liu. The situation seemed to be on the verge of breaking out, but Kyle O'Kaley turned a blind eye and just gnashed her teeth and cursed. "Thanks to you, our whole family's life is ruined." Liu said, "Yes, I'm sorry. Kyle Yankang is a pawn, but you are not. All this is dragged down by me. I'm really sorry." Kyle O'Kaley cursed. "Do you know how many years we worked hard to pay off the mortgage? Do you know how much effort we put in to send Kyle O'Kaley to a first-class school? And the flying boat, pension insurance, financial management funds. How are you going to compensate for these things?" Liu sighed. "Silver has never been known for wealth. It's better to say that we have always been known for debt. I can't compensate for these things." Kyle O'Kaley raised her eyebrows and waited for Liu to continue. If the next speech does not satisfy her, then no matter what kind of silver leader he is, she will not let it go. "However, what I cannot compensate for, the Nun family can. What you and your wife have struggled for all your life is nothing more than a document signed and approved by those big shots. If you want wealth and glory, the Nun family can give it to you. If you want peace and comfort, the Nun family can give it to you as well. In fact, when it comes to working environment and educational conditions, this small space city can never compare to Zun, which gathers the essence of the galaxy." Before Liu finished speaking, Kyle O'Kaley nodded and punched Liu in the chest. "Okay, I believe you. You must compensate our family for the losses suffered. Otherwise, no matter how willing old Kyle is to be your dog, we mother and son will definitely beat your dog head." After that, this seemingly petite woman with an incomparable sense of oppression ignored everyone present, holding her son's hand, and stood on the side of the corridor by herself, then exuded a cold breath that kept strangers away. At this point, the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Even Liu slumped her shoulders and sighed softly. "I finally know why old Kyle has been so completely abandoned these years." Kyle O'Kaley's cold eyes followed. Liu said, "With such a good wife and mother, I don't want to continue working hard, even if I were in your place." "Humph." Kyle O'Kaley raised her eyebrows, but didn't argue with Liu too much. After all, Kyle Yankang had already openly rebelled, and the future of their mother and son had long been tied to the Silver Knights. Now no matter how bad Liu's attitude was, they could only endure it. Just like in the past few years, she played a grassroots clerk, endured the unreasonable overtime requirements of her superiors countless times, and missed promotion opportunities again and again. In order to vent her pent-up anger, she could only let her husband Kyle Yankang privately teach her shooting, fighting, and everything that could be used to shuttle freely on the battlefield. Even the overtime in Chiangsa New Dawn could be tolerated, so Liu's provocative face was actually not that difficult to endure. But in a moment, her world was turned upside down, and she had to vent her anger. And the group of mercenaries who had tried to hold her and her son hostage were far from enough to calm her anger. "By the way, how's the progress on old Kyle's side?" Liu suddenly asked. "He cut off contact with me after he started the action. but I think you should still be able to communicate with each other. Kyo Kaylee sneered. Are you concerned about old Kyo, or about that kid named Zio? Liu said frankly, both. Then old Kyo is right to cut off contact. Leaders like you who verbally care about both never really care about the lives of their subordinates. Kyo Kaylee sneered. If old Kyo still keeps in touch with you, who knows how many additional demands you will make on him. Liu frowned. So, how is old Kyo's progress now? I don't know either. Kyo Kaylee said frankly, I've lost contact with him too. Most likely, old Kyo expected that you would put pressure on him through me, so he ignored me. Although this man has wasted all his abilities, he has learned how to be slick in the workplace, which is gratifying. Liu finally showed a surprised expression. Even you've lost contact? Liu did not continue the conversation, because he clearly saw a trace of suppressed worry on Kyo Kaylee's face. Kyo Yankang's loss of contact was obviously an accident, and it was definitely not to evade his duties. How could he, a pawn who had just defected, escape the arrangements of the organization's leader? However, for someone who attaches great importance to her husband, only such a reason can make people feel at ease. Now, there is a problem. Liu's voice was a little lower. There is no reason for Leo Kyo to fail. There must be some changes in the plan. Bei, help me review the whole process. Where is the accident? However, before the robot assistant could speak, Liu's communicator rang, and Kyo Yankang's breathless voice came out. Boss, I'm sorry, I failed here. For some reason, the dragon hunters also came over. I was caught off guard by them. Scene was not in good condition, and could not help, so our flying boat was shot down in Xianhuang district. I was limited by my own strength, so I could only flee separately from him. Xianhuang district. Liu nodded. Smart, that's half of your home ground. It's not a bad choice. But the opponent is the dragon hunters. Don't force it. Withdraw as soon as possible, and let C deal with the problem himself. Well, I have tried my best to hide him. If I can't handle this, then I can't do anything. After saying that, Kyo Yankang cut off the communication, and before the communication ended, Liu and others could clearly hear the sharp sound of the blaster shooting. Obviously, the middle-aged man who had been slick for nearly 10 years, after changing his identity, no longer had the slightest slickness. Liu rubbed his brows and said tiredly, Dragon Hunter, why are these crazy people here? Don't they recognize no relatives except Blue Dragon? Why are they looking for trouble with us? It's really an unexpected change. The previous plan has to start all over again. It turns out that the fate of every conspirator is hair loss. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197, Undefeated. While Liu was worrying about his hair, in the storage area on the bottom floor of Xiangsuanyudang, a group of Blackwing elites were trembling with fear about their future. As the most trusted and relied upon armed force of the board of directors, every member of Blackwing enjoys more favorable treatment than the middle-level group members like Kyo Yankang, and their food, clothing, housing and transportation are comparable to those of the upper class. But everything has a price, and extraordinary treatment means equally extraordinary and strict requirements. If you fail in daily training, you will be eliminated. If you do not perform well in tasks, you will be eliminated. If there is a stronger competitor in the same position, you will be eliminated. If the people on the board of directors are not happy with you, and Jiuo Xiaoming does not intend to protect you, you will still be eliminated. The high elimination rate of Blackwing has long been notorious in the industry. It is rare to be able to serve in Blackwing for more than 5 years, and only Jiuo Xiaoming has served for more than 10 years. Although after being eliminated, as long as you sign a strict confidentiality agreement and don't talk too much, you can return to ordinary life. But anyone who has experienced the benefits will never be content with being ordinary again. Moreover, if there are serious omissions in the mission, the accountability will be extremely severe afterwards. In the most extreme case, the Captain Jiuo Xiaoming even has the right to execute on the spot. And now it seems that there is a serious omission in this mission. Although the main mission goal is considered to be successfully completed, Nanyujan is safe and sound, and the lost Zhuanhuang blood is successfully recovered, but the cost of the mission is too heavy. Putting aside the casualties of the team members, the most important loss is that the dignified Black Wing was humiliated by Li Yu in front of Nanyujin and Nan Wuoyao. In fact, for a special organization like Black Wing, the face problem is the most important issue. Because the prestige of Black Wing is their real reliance on invincibility, which is more important than the so-called intelligence advantage. The intelligence advantage of the board of directors is limited. No matter how strong the ruling power of Kyankan groupies, it is impossible to spread its tentacles to every corner of the galaxy. In addition, the bloatedness and inefficiency that a huge organization will inevitably produce. In fact, it is impossible for the board of directors to know everything. The board of directors only packaged Black Wing as omniscient and invincible to deter potential enemies. And all along, under the leadership of Jiuo Xiaoming, Black Wing rarely failed, so this deterrence continued to accumulate, making more and more people who knew about it feel afraid. And this time, thanks to Li Yu's wonderful performance, the prestige accumulated by Black Wing over the years was almost wiped out. If the news spreads, it will not be so easy for Black Wing to win without fighting. In comparison, the death of a few members is not a big deal at all. There are countless people willing to join Black Wing. In addition to the Captain Jiuo Xiaoming and Zero, there are as many alternatives as you want. Therefore, the Black Wing team members gathered around Jiuo Xiaoming at this time, even without time to consider the casualties of their teammates, but just lowered their heads and secretly observed the captain's face to judge their own future. How much will everyone pay if this mission fails? How many people will be eliminated? Will anyone be executed on the spot? People looked at the gloomy face of Jiuo Xiaoming, the messenger of Yu Guang. For a moment, except for Zero, no one dared to guarantee that the captain's gun would not point at them. Just when everyone was panicking, Jiuo Xiaoming said, "Don't think too much. The responsibility for this defeat is mine. I will explain everything to the board of directors and take responsibility." The team members present were surprised and happy when they heard this. The petite woman immediately raised her head with shining eyes. "Really?" Jiuo Xiaoming glanced at her, and her joy turned cold. "No, Captain, will you be okay?" Jiuo Xiaoming sneered. "What can happen? If they execute me, who can the board of directors promote to take over? Moreover, they owed me a lot of favors over the years. Just one or two failures can't do anything to me." After that, Jiuo Xiaoming restrained his smile and said in a deep voice, "But don't be too happy too soon. Today's events will be leaked sooner or later, and a faceless Black Wing will no longer be able to make the enemy piss and shit like before just by reporting a name. It's no longer possible. We need to use countless victories to redeem this failure, and we must fight for every victory with all our strength. In this process, some people will inevitably not keep up with the pace and be eliminated. Just try your best to pray that the eliminated person is not you. Yes. Okay, the responsibility that you are most concerned about has been clarified, and then let's get down to work. Director Nanyujin's escort mission has ended, and we only need to bring Zhuanhuang blood back to the top of the sky. Soon, Jiuo Xiaoming gave everyone a simple work assignment, and then announced that this gloomy post-war summary meeting was over, and everyone dispersed. After more than a dozen worried Black Wing warriors dispersed, Jiuo Xiaoming was left alone in the dark space of the storage area, slightly closing his eyes and thinking silently. In the darkness, a hoarse voice came from behind him. "Why should I let him win?" Jiuo Xiaoming opened his eyes and said without turning his head, "I have never let him win. I have been very serious from the beginning to the end, but the contemporary leader of Bei'an is indeed as powerful as his reputation. He is always one step ahead of me in his calculations. The expert group is not wrong to classify him as the top threat of the group. He is completely different from his indecisive adoptive father. That's not the reason for your failure. If you were more serious," Jiuo Xiaoming interrupted, "if you were more serious, you would just end up in a fight with Li Yu and both of us would suffer losses. This time the opponent is obviously well prepared. His preparations are much more perfect than mine. Almost every move of mine did not exceed Li Yu's expectations. How do you want me to win in this situation? Zero. Don't overestimate me. I'm also a human being. I can't be omniscient and invincible. The hoarse voice suddenly fell silent, but in the darkness, an emotion called unwillingness spread like a substance. After a long while, Guo Xiaoming sighed and said, besides, what can we do, even if we defeat Li Yu? For a dignified Black Wing, isn't it natural to defeat a civilian organization that grew up in a deserted area? And if we win this time, what about the next time? What about the next time? I've won for 10 years, and I'm really tired. Captain, what you mean is, Guo Xiaoming said, now, even you, Zero, who is close to him, cannot accept the simple fact that Guo Xiaoming will also fail. The people on the board of directors and the expert group are accustomed to throwing all kinds of difficult and complicated problems to me to deal with, such as Nanheli. They don't care what the job of Black Wing is, and they take every hard-earned victory for granted. After a pause, Guo Xiaoming said with emotion, I'm worried that, if this goes on, they will ask me to deal with that GD Master. Chapter 198 Awakening. Although Zero sounded like the captain was just complaining and joking, he realized that there might be some truth in it, and couldn't help asking, Mostima? Guo Xiaoming nodded lightly. In fact, when the GD Master and Apprentice just entered the galaxy, the board of directors planned to send me to deal with it, but I forcibly turned it down on the grounds of Nanheli's follow-up work. And you saw the result. That idiot Xia Yan was teased by her and was exhausted. He had to go to the top of the sky from time to time to apologize to the board of directors. Xia Yan is a complete waste. Zero, with a hoarse voice, commented with disdain. If his last name was not Xia, he wouldn't even be qualified to be a doorman for the security bureau. If it was you, Captain, what's the difference? The reason why I have been invincible in the past few years is that I will not choose an opponent I can't beat. That's a GD Master, the maintainer of order in the Republic. Only a fool with water in his brain would be eager to make an enemy of such a person. Zero had a different opinion on this. I don't think the GD Knight is that great. Just now in the hangar, that guy was almost smashed to pieces. Guo Xiaoming said, seen as just an apprentice who is only half your age, and you have been forced to give up the frontal battlefield. You can only set a trap for him, and in the end you failed. That's because, Zero argued, someone leaked the information secretly. That kid clearly knew at the last moment that there was a bomb on the Divine Thunder, so he avoided it in time. Hearing this, Guo Xiaoming did not comment. GD Knights have an extremely keen sense of danger. They don't need anyone to remind them. Scene may also be aware of the danger on the spacecraft and respond in time. Well, there is no need to discuss this matter anymore. Let the past be the past. For some time in the future, we will no longer have contact with the Silver Knights, let alone be enemies with the GD Knights. Zero said, is that so? But I think that Li Yu seems to want to use the GD Knights to do something. At that time, I should still be reflecting behind closed doors by then, and Black Wing is also reorganizing and preparing. I'm afraid it will be unable to deal with the turmoil caused by the joint efforts of the Silver Knights and the GD Knights. And it may not be necessary for us to take action. Li Yu's attitude this time is so radical and tough that he even ignores Black Wing. His intentions are obvious. Naturally, someone will be more nervous than us later. At the end, Guo Xiaoming suddenly couldn't help but sneer. Haha, you like to talk about responsibilities and duties so much, then let me see your responsibilities and duties. Facing an unexpectedly tenacious and aggressive competitor, how are you going to carry forward your duties? After laughing, there was no echo from Zero in the warehouse area. The man with 100 faces who liked to hide in the shadows had already left tactfully when the laughter sounded. Because in almost everyone's impression, Guo Xiaoming is an extremely serious person. The expression of smile almost only appears in some social occasions that cannot be avoided as a courtesy. Therefore, once Guo Xiaoming laughs, it means that he doesn't want other people around him. As the most trusted Zero, he naturally knew when to leave. After a burst of mocking laughter, Guo Xiaoming did not stop smiling. Instead, He put on a slightly ferocious expression, stretched out his hand, and pushed open the metal box in front of him, and asked softly, "What do you think, Zuan Huang blood?" Scene had a fragmented dream. The content of the dream was indescribable. The short dream was divided into countless static pictures, most of which were what he saw and heard after coming to the Kern galaxy, including the scene of parting with his master at the manor, his daily interactions with his teammates in the Red Apricot Squad, and of course, his repeated baptism of worldviews after encountering Xiaozi. But in addition to these colorful and eye-catching dream fragments, there are also many fragmented pictures with unknown meanings. Among them, Scene saw a group of blurred figures. They were on a desolate planet with red sand all over the sky. Their bodies were distorted by pain, as if they were an artistic painting showing suffering. Scene also saw a primitive and dense forest, where a group of ragged pioneers lit a bonfire in the clearing in the forest and laughed happily. These pioneers included humans, Twi'leks, Ithorians, Weequays, and some races that Scene could not recognize. Although they had different appearances and cultural customs, they were fighting for the same goal and laughing for the same joy. Among the pioneers, Scene vaguely saw some shadows with horns on their heads and scales on their skin, but before he could take a closer look, the picture shattered like a bubble, and a new picture replaced it. On the same land, the dense forest was replaced by a city built of steel. The pioneers built a prosperous home here and lived the rich and civilized life they had always dreamed of. However, the residents in the city were no longer as all-encompassing as the pioneer team, but were dominated by humans, and almost no other races were seen. This change made Scene feel a little sad for no reason. At this moment, all the fragments in the dream melted away, and a woman with a blurred face occupied the entire dream. Scene could not see her face clearly, and could not even identify her figure. But inexplicably, Scene felt a strong sense of intimacy from the bottom of his heart, as if this blurred woman was of extraordinary significance to him. Then, Scene suddenly woke up. When he opened his eyes, his vision was still a little blurry. He could vaguely distinguish that there were pieces of crooked and rusty metal plates in front of him. In the gap between the plates, there was a rusty droplet, which slowly slid along the edge and finally dripped down, and fell into a metal can on the ground, making a crisp sound. Tick-tock. As if a switch was turned on. The next moment, a noisy sound like a tide poured into Scene's ears. The sound of footsteps, the rumble of mechanical engines, the metallic music from the inferior speakers, and the dense sound of conversations. All of this wove together into a discordant and noisy music, which made the Jedi apprentice, who had just woken up from a dream, feel numb in the head. He could only passively accept the noisy information around him, as if he was a lonely island in a roaring ocean. Chapter 199, The Unrecognizable Old Friend. This expired, low-quality canned food is too expensive for 2 Kyankan coins. How dare you ask for 5 Kyankan coins? You might as well go rob. If you can't afford it, get out. I make a few $100s a day, and I'm too lazy to rob a poor guy like you. The latest trendy fashion clothing in Xiangsun, produced by Zun, original factory, 100% woven with Hua King silk, 50% off. Boss, you must be living in a dream. Hua King silk strictly restricts exports and its products are only sold in Kun. If you have the ability to get Hua King silk, why would you set up a stall in Xianhuan district? You are so knowledgeable, why don't you go to Xiangsuan district to be a scholar? And why are you bargaining with me at a stall in Xianhuan district? Aunt Zhang, please take care of that metal junk in your house. It even swept into my house during the cleaning, and ate my shoes. I don't want that junk anymore, I'm giving it to you. Get lost, I won't give you free recycling. Even the dealers in Area 4 won't accept this kind of Southwestern one. Take the things away quickly and compensate me for the shoes. With the baptism of these voices, Scene's memory quickly went back, making him realize the environment he was in. This should be Xianhuang Area 5. In Scene's memory, after the airship was shot down by the dragon hunters, Kaio Yankang did his best to force the airship to land at the transportation hub between areas 4 and 5, barely dragged Scene and hid him in the dark, and then went alone to attract the attention of all the pursuers. In his memory, there was only a vague remnant of a tragic and resolute, swaying and staggering back, and Scene didn't know what happened afterwards. He was in a very bad state at the time. First, he was injured by the shock wave of the bomb in the Shenlong type spacecraft, and his leg was broken. Then he crashed from a high altitude, and was covered with scratches when he landed. At that time, the sequel of a series of high-intensity battles in Chiangsu and Nudong also broke out. The strong sense of fatigue could not be suppressed at all, and it swept over like a tide. It was natural to fall into a coma. Judging from the environment after waking up, this place is obviously no longer a transportation hub connecting districts 4 and 5, and it is even less likely to be Shianhuang District 4. District 4 is an important primary industrial park, responsible for supplying various basic components needed by the entire city, modular parts for efficient repair plants, various plants and animals needed for ecological parks, and scattered waste recycling stations, etc. Although it is only a primary industrial park, it is far less high-end and atmospheric than the industrial park in Chiangsaen district, which is home to high-end enterprises such as advanced smelters, cell repair centers, and magnet processing stations. However, it is mainly based on strict manufacturing and processing, and it is impossible to have such a strong atmosphere of fireworks. But who brought me to District 5? Where is this place in District 5? How long has it been since I fell into a coma? At this moment, Scene suddenly heard two people talking not far from him, outside this simple metal room. One was crisp and pleasant, a smart and shrewd woman, and the other was dull and vicious, vaguely belonging to a middle-aged man. I'm warning you, human woman. If you can't pay the rent by tomorrow, pack up and get out. Who else can you expect to rent a house like yours that's so shabby, and can't even be sealed up except me? If you dare to charge 200 yuan a month for such a messy location, I'm the only one willing to pay. Stop talking so much. I'll smash your little head. Hit me to death, and your house will be sealed up immediately, and you'll never be able to rent it out again. HMPH. Prepare the rent before tomorrow. The conversation ended here. After the vicious middle-aged man threatened, he walked away with heavy and staggering steps, and the fierce woman sighed with lingering fear, as if the courage to confront the landlord head-on had been exhausted in just a few words. After a moment of silence, the woman turned around and opened the sliding door behind her, which creaked immediately. With the noise of metal sheets rubbing against each other, the sliding door suddenly opened, and a burst of colorful light leaked into the room, shining on Scene's face. The strong light forced Scene to squint his eyes, and he could only see the vague outline of the woman. For some reason, the slender outline seemed familiar. When the woman saw Scene wake up, she cheered in surprise. Wow, you're awake. That's great. Then, she jumped to Scene's side into steps, gently held Scene's wrist, and asked while groping, how do you feel? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Your pulse seems to be unstable. Do you need something to eat? I just bought some mixed porridge. Scene squinted his eyes, and tried to adapt to the stimulation of the strong light, as soon as possible. The woman's face became clearer and clearer during the adaptation process. It was a young and beautiful face, that looked to be in her early 20s at most. Although it looked a little scary and weird under the strong light outside, Scene still recognized her. Huang Zuan! Exclamation mark. With an incredible sense of absurdity, Scene gradually emerged with memories related to her. Not long ago, the Red Apricot Squad raided DUI 4399 and rescued a group of civilians who were abducted in the underground base. This woman named Huang Zuan was one of them. Scene still remembers clearly that she was wearing an exquisite close-fitting cheongsam at the time. She was young and beautiful, but she was immersed in fear, like a walking corpse. However, when she left the underground base of DUI and arrived at Baiyin's hometown safely by spaceship, she came out of confusion and fear and mustered up the courage to face the new environment. Among the depressed and confused survivors, she was like a flower in the ashes. At that time, the Jedi apprentice was very optimistic that she could settle down in Wasteland as soon as possible. Now, it is really unexpected that Huang Zuan has settled down to Li. Huang Zuan, why are you here? The woman heard the words and stopped talking, and then her eyes burst into surprise. You still remember me? No, should I say you can still recognize me? I'm so happy. I thought I had changed beyond recognition after falling into this place. Scene hesitated. Objectively speaking, compared with the Chiangsun girl in his memory, Huang Zuan in front of him was indeed completely different. In terms of appearance, even if the interference of the strong light outside the house was excluded, Huang Zuan at this time was completely different from the past. Her long hair was cut less than ear length, her skin was stained with dust, her lips were also cracked, and the once gorgeous Chiangsun had become a bloated and worn out cheap fabric. In terms of temperament, this girl with high spirits and a smile on her face was completely different from the terrified girl in the underground base. However, these changes did not constitute a disturbance to the Jedi apprentice, who could accurately distinguish people based on facial bone features. Chapter 200 Landlord. Fortunately, there was no need for Scene to explain anything at this time. Huang Zuan had already started chatting on her own. You were injured quite badly before. I was worried that you would need to sleep for a few more days. Don't get me wrong. I'm not urging you. Try to heal your injuries first. I'll go get you some porridge first. Huang Zuan was full of endless energy. She didn't even wait for Scene to reply. She let go of his wrist and jumped outside to get the porridge. Looking at her relaxed and cheerful back, Scene subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. Although it was really incredible that Huang Zuan ran from the wasteland to the slums of Li, it was reassuring to see that she was in good condition at the moment. However, after taking 2 steps, Scene heard a rough shouting coming from outside the house. Open the door. Search for the criminal. A human male about 17 or 18 years old, with black hair and black eyes. Have you seen him before? Open the door. When I tell you to, why are you talking so much nonsense? Do you want to die? Take away that pile of rags. Don't play dumb. It's that pile of rags under your butt. What are these batteries for? Robot parts? How many robots are there in this broken place? Why do you need so many parts? And why are you hiding normal parts? I think there is something fishy. It is necessary to take them back for inspection. Maybe they are related to the wanted criminal. If I say they are related, then they are related. If you want to talk about reason, go and settle in Chiangsun district. The superiors there are willing to talk about your mother's reason. Then there was a muffled sound of metal beating flesh and blood, and even occasionally accompanied by the blaster firing, the blaster beam hitting the metal building and sparking. With the commotion, dense and messy footsteps quickly approached Scene's house. Scene felt that all the muscles in his body could not help but tense up, and the premonition of fighting filled his mind. Obviously, the people outside the house were coming for him. As expected, during the unknown period of time when he was unconscious, wanted orders for him had spread to every corner of Li, and Chianhuang District 5 was no exception. So these predator-like mercenaries came here to arrest people. In this city, the official power is very weak. The security force led by Xia Jiang has only dozens of people. On weekdays, they can only show their presence in the comfortable areas such as Chiangsun District. The real maintenance of the city order is the ubiquitous private soldiers. Among them, the ones with good quality are responsible for serving the upper class, while the ones with poor quality are wandering at the bottom. There is no doubt that the mercenaries at the bottom of the city who are showing off their power outside the house at this time are the scum of the scum, whether in terms of weapons and equipment, training level, or even organizational discipline. However, what Scene least wants to see now is this group of omnipresent scum. They may be vulnerable on the front battlefield, but they are best at catching wind and shadows and digging deep into the ground. Even the batteries in the pile of rags under the buttocks could be turned out, so how could a living person lying in a shabby room be spared? Once Scene was exposed, fighting was inevitable. When he thought about fighting a group of unscrupulous scum in such a crowded place, Scene felt a headache. Along with the headache, there was also a piercing pain in his right leg. He just subconsciously wanted to get up, but his right leg became weak with a little force. Obviously, Scene's coma was not long, at least not long enough for the broken leg to heal. Besides, Huang Zuan was not Wang Yi, and did not have the conditions and technology to provide him with medical treatment. The current state was extremely bad. Once Scene was discovered by the mercenaries outside the door, he might not be able to hide, and he would not be able to fight. It was simply hopeless. However, the more critical the situation was, the calmer Scene was. He calmed down and quickly thought of a solution. The mob outside the door certainly has the advantages of a mob, but it is still a mob after all. Those low quality mercenaries are like fish in water in the slums, but they cannot change their nature as scum. Unlike those elite soldiers who have undergone rigorous training, or have rich practical experience, these mercenaries who are mixed in the lower levels of the city are often weak-willed. From the noise just now, and the swaying and staggering footsteps, Scene even boldly guessed that many of them came here to show off their power after being drunk. For such opponents, Scene, as a Jedi apprentice, just has a powerful weapon, mind control. Although Scene's mind control is mediocre, and it is difficult to work on those with strong minds, it is more than enough to control a group of low-level mercenaries. With just a clear order, Scene can make them turn a blind eye to everything in front of them. And once you fool the first wave, it is almost equivalent to completely getting away with it. That group of impatient mercenaries should not search the same place repeatedly. On the contrary, their distorted memories can serve as a cover for Scene. Thinking of this, Scene was somewhat excited, and even the pain in his legs temporarily subsided. When those messy footsteps arrived at the door, Scene outlined an extremely bold action plan in his mind. Instead of simply muddling through for a while, it is better to completely control those mercenaries, then blend in with them, and go directly to their hometown. Even if they are the bottom scum, they are still mercenaries after all, and they should have some reserves of weapons and medicine, which can just solve Scene's urgent needs. And more importantly, most of these bottom scum have secret passages leading to the outside world. Whether it is escaping or smuggling, secret passages are essential. However, before Scene's thoughts can continue to extend, he heard a heavy sound of footsteps approaching quickly, blocking them out before the mercenaries opened the door. "All of you, stop." The hoarse and dull voice sounded very familiar to Scene. The owner of the voice was the landlord who had talked to Huang Zuan not long ago. However, his tone was filled with murderous intent, which even made Scene in the room feel his hair stand on end. This deterrent force also frightened the mercenaries outside the door. For a while, the sound of guns colliding came one after another, and trembling shouts followed. "You, red-faced man, what do you want to do? Do you want to go to war with our Poison Heart group? Let me tell you, the boss of our Poison Heart group has drunk with the leader of the Ironback Wolf gang. We are also following orders from above to search for criminals. If you have any opinions, go and tell them. It's useless to embarrass us." Although the mercenaries were numerous and armed, they were extremely cowardly in front of the landlord alone. For a moment, the mercenaries were talking at once, unable to agree on a single word. Their shouting became increasingly shrill, but it remained at that level, like a small pet dog barking to embolden itself. The landlord ignored them, and stood guard at the door of his property, refusing to budge. The mercenaries, however, continued to shout without giving in, while retreating step by step until the two sides had completely distanced themselves, and then they simply scattered. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.